Um,
I've done it.
Oh, good man.
I'm in. I'm in. It's entitled today, All the Bondage of Caligula in One Session. No, it's not actually. It's completely reversed. This is Caligula Part 1. We're going to be, we've got Caligula over the next 3 weeks. And the big reveal at the end.
Oh.
Well, basically, he did invade Britain, but that's something else.
How do you know?
It was there.
Because the evidence is stacking up. In fact, I've got so many notes and so much research. It's I'm gonna have to spread it over 3 weeks. But whilst I'm masticating, right? Let's find out if anyone's got any news this week. Now, Margaret, I said masticating, okay? Right, Margaret.
I know you did. There was a really good programme with our friend Alice Roberts. Did anybody see it?
No.
It was a train journey through the Roman Empire.
No.
It was
I always knew they had trains.
She was literally on a train. She went to Pompeii. It was really good, the Pompeii bit. And she saw things that have only just been revealed. She had the very first view of these rooms that nobody's seen before and these amazing frescoes. And it was very, very good. And then she was in Naples. I think it was on Saturday night. Was it Friday?
Can I just ask you a question? Was the original Roman Pompeii train station cut by Beeching?
Yeah.
2 years ago, yeah.
But what a wonderful life she has.
What, Beeching
around in
yeah.
luxury trains and gets to see these things before anybody else. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah, good programs.
Roger used to say that about all the women he used to meet. Anything else, Margaret?
Well, they were a bit bawdy, weren't they, those Romans?
What, Roger's women? What? Okay.
Yeah, the frescoes were a little bit bawdy, you might say.
Fair enough.
Bawdy.
Fair enough. No, bawdy.
Where were these frescoes? Were they in houses that people lived in, or in the latrine?
Yeah, they found a massive, like a palace there that they've only just discovered. And but also they'd removed a lot of frescoes and put them in the museum in Naples.
Which is something that I think they're gonna this is why they're gonna have the environmental conditions to actually leave them on site now. So I think that's the one thing. There's one thing about one thing about moving the mosaics from one place to another and the frescoes. But environmentally and if you leave them in place and you've got all the conditions for it, then it's more stable for the structures. That's the whole reason why you've got them in the first place. If you remove them, then it offers further decay to the structure. So obviously this is why they're putting all the structures in place at Pompeii at the moment. So yeah, for the time being,
they found a laundry. They were looking at the laundry room. And it seems they used to wash the clothes in urine.
Yeah.
People used to deliver the urine and leave it outside. And then the powers that be got wise to it and they started taxing them on their urine.
Can I just say a really terrible joke from EastEnders?
Go on.
Ethel used to say, "Where's my little Willie?" Oh, sorry, that's how they knew it was a laundry. Right, sorry. Sorry, that was really bad.
Very good. I would recommend it. It was good viewing.
Okay, then. Nothing else then, Margaret?
No.
Anything from you, David? David looks rather smart today.
No, nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Drina, what about you, babe?
No, nothing from me.
Do you know what? Right, I don't know if you've ever played around with TikTok. You've almost got those glasses on that sort of they've got as a thing that everybody can try them on, and your glasses don't look real actually. I don't know if that's an insult or what, but they look really good. So there we go. All right then.
What a spectacle!
What a spectacle! Exactly. Right. Talking about Roger. Roger, can I just, on behalf of everybody else, right? Why do we just see the top of your bonds?
Because I'm relaxing, listening to your fascinating discourse.
And we just see the top of your head. Right. Okay.
Yeah, well, I can raise.
Yes.
I'm threatening you, so I can't risk that. See?
All right, Rog.
Very careful.
All right, Rog. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Okay then. Will. Oh, Rog. Anything you want to say, babe?
No, nothing particularly yet. I'll criticise you. I mean, ask questions later on.
So you're gonna give me the damnatio. Anything that I've said, anything that I've done in life, you will erase and destroy. Okay, Roger, we'll do that.
Yes.
Fine.
I'll get at you. Don't worry.
Cheers, Roger. Will, can I just mention something, Will? Right, you sent me 3 emails about Caligula coins, right? How were you aware of my research into Caligula coins that I'll be doing part of about tonight?
I'm psychic.
I'm Rog.
Yeah. The coin evidence for Caligula is extremely odd. So there you go.
Oh.
Thank you for that, Will. Anything else you want to say, Will?
Well, actually, the reason I sent you the coins, Carl, I was looking to see if there was any reference to the invasion of Britain or as a tribute on a coin, and I couldn't see any references directly in the text that accompanied the coins that I looked at. But that's by the way. Garamentis, did you share any of my
Yeah,
my
I did send it over to everybody. So
Right.
so yeah, explain a little bit more about that. Well, basically you sent in some of the images, and there are intriguing possible enterprises that could relate to this lost empire in southern Libya. So go on,
yeah.
Will.
Yeah, there was one section where I gave you a shot that looked like a fort that was covered with sand dunes, and that one is quite significant. But
yeah,
on Caligula, I also uncovered an 1811 text, The Lives of the 12 Emperors. This was written by Eliza Rogers in 5 volumes, and Caligula's oh, hang on.
Vitae, life.
Yeah, Caligula's information. It's a few pages. It might be, I don't know, 30 pages, which I've already copied. But I will put them into a video.
Yeah.
But it appears to be quite interesting, and again, a story from a different approach to some of the other materials I've looked at.
Yeah, well, I've been the problem is I've been trying to make sense of all of this stuff with Caligula, and obviously looking at the writers involving Caligula, and some of the stuff that I've managed to look at today that I might be doing. It's very odd what I found about the Roman writers, right? So, in a nutshell, there are a couple that basically say, look, he's a nut job and they're collecting shells off a beach, right? And my response is they collected shells off a beach in Britain, and trying to find a beach in southern Britain that actually has a lot of shells, which obviously they've collected shells. There's nothing else that they could go back to France with, and they just put them on board the ships, and that's basically one thing. But there's lots of Roman writers who are actually not mentioning Caligula as an invasion of Britain at all, right? So one minute you've got a couple of writers really deriding him, and a few other writers saying, well, he didn't, there's no reference to any of this, and there's a weird black hole that I'm looking into, and it's looking odd. So anything else, Will?
No, we'll let it go, and
Okay.
we'll catch up later on.
Okay, Anne?
No, nothing from me. Sorry.
Okay, and Andy?
No, nothing from me.
Okay, good. Well, not good, but just saying. But basically, look at this nice little bit of chert that Michelle found in the field the other day, right? And it's a bit of burnt chert, and this could be very interesting in regards to the site that we've got here, which I'm not going to say anything more about. So there you go. So I've just completed an illicit pillar that should be with you in the post very, very shortly. And I was going to send you. We've got a box of 60 Manchester United medallions, which I was going to send you one out all in the post because I know you're fans of Manchester United, but I don't think I'll bother now. Right. Shut up, Rog. So basically, unfortunately this week I've become a bit distracted because we've got a Viking skull to look at. Emma's contacted me from the Carinian Museum about these these mosaics have actually been sent back to the Carinian Museum. So I got her press release. Emma used to work for me years ago, right? And so I've tracked her down, so that's good. So we've also I wanted to. Anne keeps talking about the painted cave in Egypt, which is actually relevant today. So we're going to mention that. Some timber associated with a wreck from 1631, work in the Arctic. And also maybe if some of you want to come on board, maybe if some of you are interested a little bit more, sort of having a little Caligula study group, right? So that would be good. I've also been looking at the invasion of 56 BC. So, but the problem is tonight is that I've just realized I've bitten off more than I can chew because I've got so much stuff. So I'm gonna probably Caligula is going to be over 3 weeks now because I just cannot digest everything that I've come across. It's almost as for most historians, Caligula seems to be a bit of a footnote, and then suddenly he's not. Right, so let's just get into sense and sensibility, and yeah, I was asked to do that actually. I never did it. Never mind. Share. So no, share. Sunny and share. Right, good. Share it, Rog. Right, okay. What? What are you on about? Right, okay. Right, so as you can see, there's loads of stuff tonight. It's just like it's just shining, right? There's you can see it. There's just look at all the coins there. It's where we are. But what I think the best place to do is start last week with Bill's Roman walls in Exeter. Yes, I showed these last week, but it's basically the Roman stuff is something that when I get to it, I immerse myself in it totally. And I've just when I was saying a while back, it's like a topic that I try to avoid doing because I never leave it. And unfortunately, now you're in the midst of me doing the Romans, and there's just so much to do. And you'll be all Romaned out after a few years. You'll just be, oh my God, I don't want to do any more Romans. Please, just don't want to do any more. But then again, you might just want me to keep doing the Romans. Anyway, this thing about Africa intrigued me, right? And who the hell's just left us?
Will.
What?
Will's gone.
Well, it must have been something I said. Africa massively intrigues me, and basically, I was watching a series the other day, right? And it was that series with a certain actor, Hopkins, who plays a Roman emperor in it. And I cut out these images. Hang on a minute. I remember saying last week, Hollywood, right, portrays Africa as being like this, right? The series that I was actually watching is on Amazon, and it's a new series. It was out last year, 2024. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, it was basically in regards to the reign of Vespasian that was played by that great actor Hopkins, and it basically showed a city in Africa on it, and I just thought this city in Africa in Numidia was shown underneath a massive sand dune, right, in the deserts, and I thought that's why people think Africa is one big desert in the Roman period, because it's always portrayed like this. Absolutely shocked by this image.
Can we
Right.
see it in landscape
Can you
shape?
do it now,
Carl?
Carl?
Yeah, I think yeah, we'll see it in landscape, right? So I'm just gonna. It was just the way I did it tonight. So if we do reset, and we go with where do I go? Hang on, there, bingo.
That's
Right,
it.
look at that. Does that make any sense? Why would you put a city there? There's nothing, right? There's no point in having a city there. And the whole I've actually got to find out the name of this this film. Hang on a minute. This
On
series.
trade routes.
Yeah, it might be on the trade routes, but the fact of the matter is these places have to feed themselves. I was watching
Yeah.
oh god, what's it called? Hang on a minute. It's in my diary somewhere. I can't remember. But anyway, the series I was watching is obviously portraying Africa like this, right? And I was just thinking, all these cities, all these trade routes, how the hell do they feed themselves? And this is the wrong way to portray Africa, you know? And I just thought, yes, that was a point being made. So it's a little bit down to Hollywood. Anyway, back to where we were off from last week, right? So obviously there was a little bit more interest in this Gamantes area, and yes, and it got me thinking again about this painted cave in Egypt, and you're thinking, well, okay, why is there a cave with paintings in it of people actually swimming, portrayed 10,000 years ago? And one image is so lifelike, but we'll come on to that in a short while. So again, it's that thinking about the Roman world much wider than we can ever give it credit for. The Roman world is about so much more than within the lines, within the borders. It's outside those borders. That's why we were looking a little bit more into Africa, right? And when we think about the Black Sea, there's so much more around the Black Sea about the Roman world than we don't talk about. And when we talk about in Germania, like there's so much more in Germania as well. So I've been asking lots of these questions this week, and it's been sort of in my mind a lot, right? So before we go on to any further, and I'm a bit sorry that my images seem to be a little bit more all over the place. Oh, there it is. So this is something that Anne's been talking about again, and the Cave of the Swimmers, a rock shelter on and there it is, basically southwestern Egypt, you know, the most driest sort of part of Egypt, you know, on the border of Libya, right? And again, it's like thinking, look how lifelike that figure is with that with that woman's two arms in front of her as she's swimming, and that's really lifelike. And you think this was created sort of 10,000 years ago, and this is obviously definitely showing people swimming, and you're thinking, well, why is this in a cave in the middle of absolute nowhere today? So you think, well, obviously there was a lot more water around then, and this is the point that Anne's been making, yeah. And it's one of those things about sort of understanding history, and obviously with the cave, and there's cave art in absolutely the middle of nowhere, and obviously there's lots of designs here. This is another area from the Cave of the Swimmers, and again that's sort of looking at the African theme. But let's move away from the African theme for this week. And what we did last week, what I was thinking was, when I came away last week, I thought, right, we've talked about 55, we've talked about 54 BC, yeah. But what about 56 BC? Carl keeps mentioning 56 BC. What exactly happened in 56 BC? So I might be able to give you a little bit of an overview about that, right? And the 56 BC invasion. But where we were last week we talked about Ebbsfleet, and we talked about the archaeological evidence there. And one of the things about the galleys, I know one of you sent me images of galleys that were there in and around that the Romans could have used, and obviously not a galley of this scale. And again, going back to Ebbsfleet, looking at the archaeological evidence, and you know what, my mind is actually moving a little bit from Julius Caesar to Caligula, and maybe trying to really get to grips with seeing the archaeological evidence for what it is and what it might be. And one of the things that I was actually thinking of when I was thinking about the Caesar stuff, the evidence for Caesar is more slighter than the evidence for Caligula, and trying to make those comparisons. And then I got into Augustus, and I got into the coins, and I was starting to think about all these different things. And one of the things that got me really interested in the Caligula stuff, and Michelle said to me, I'm getting a bit obsessed by it, but then again, it's good to have an obsession with an absolutely bonkers Roman emperor than a woman wandering down the street. So that's quite more healthy. But one of the things that I was thinking about with the coin evidence is that I really started. I was driving the other day, and I was driving did a 2-hour journey. And I thought, right, what's this coin evidence? And I thought, right, I phoned, I pulled over and I phoned this guy that I used to buy coins off, Michael Trenery in Cornwall. So since the 1980s, I used to buy Roman coins, and I used to sell them and whatever. And it was good to catch up with him. And I was speaking to Michael, and I said, have you got any Caligula coins? And he said, they're excessively rare, you know, they're really, really rare. Anyway, I drove off after that call, and I didn't continue the call because I had to get on the motorway. And I started thinking right, coins themselves, Caligula issued coins for a very, very short period of time, right? So between AD 37 and AD 41, right? And any evidence of coins in Britain, I realized, told us two things. And we'll go back to the Julius Caesar stuff in a moment, because I've got to try and end the Julius Caesar stuff for now, today, right? Before I really get into Caligula in the nuts and bolts next week, as much as I'm doing a little bit this week as well. But I thought about the Caligula coins, and I just quickly thought evidence of worn Caligula coins that have been in circulation, indicate that they had come over in his reign, right? Buried mint coins of Caligula means that they had been circulated within the period of his reign, right? And that's proof of something. And the 2 points is that all coins issued by Caligula that remained in circulation after his assassination were melted down, destroyed, and got rid of, right? So that means that there was no real chance of any coins coming over to Britain after AD 41, right? Fact completely. Coins that may have been in circulation in Britain after AD 41, right, are very strange things indeed, but we'll come to that. Anyway, back to the Julius Caesar stuff, right? So back to 54 BC, back to this evidence at Ebbsfleet, looking at Julius Caesar again. Move Caligula out your heads for a moment. We mentioned this pilum, we mentioned this wonderful Roman sort of spear. So obviously it's got a shaft, it's got a very thin piece of metal there, and obviously you've got this on the top, right, which is 10 centimeters long. Ebbsfleet evidence. And where we went last week, we were looking at Julius Caesar, the De Bello Gallico. And basically Julius Caesar's vitae, his work, his written work in connection with the Gallic-Belgic War. And we really got into this last week, and we looked at the books, we looked at the various chapters, and we did all this. So we're not going to go back over to this, but there are big areas between the chapters missing where he's talking about other stuff in Gaul, right? So chapter 29 goes on to chapter 36, and this is talking about 55 BC, right? This is chapter 36, coming to the end of his invasion in 55 BC. After these things, Caesar thought it best, for many reasons, to lead back his army to Gaul, especially as the equinox was approaching and the sea is stormy in those parts. So the campaigning period is over, right? So then last week I stopped, right? I very much stopped, right? And I was hearing it off people on Wednesday, and I think you guys, and I was thinking 800 vessels, right? 800 vessels. Is this an exaggeration? What's going on? Anyway, back to this, the second invasion. So book 5, chapter 1, opening up with his next invasion in 56 BC. 54 BC. Let's not get you too confused, guys. So, chapter 1, book 5, in the winter following, Caesar prepared a great number of ships than he had done before, and ordered those which were damaged in the former year to be repaired, right? So before, we're talking about, we're not talking about 100 vessels. This time we're talking about 800 vessels. Right, so book 5, chapter 8, Caesar landed in Britain with 5 legions and 2,000 horse. For the Britons drew up their forces on the higher ground with their cavalry and chariots. Now, the one point is with Julius Caesar taking 5 legions to Britain, right? That would equate to probably, if we want to look at, between a quarter and a third of the entire Roman army coming over to Britain, leaving his provinces in Africa, leaving his provinces in Persia, leaving the provinces all over the Roman Empire very vulnerable to attack from anyone, including on the Rhinic Gallic front, Germanic frontier, right? So, when this is one of the things, right, and I see this a lot, and I find this really difficult. Now, one thing I'm going to say tonight is that if any of you haven't got a copy of my Romans in South Wales book, you need to tell me tonight now, because I'm going to start referring to my book Big Time, right? And in my book Big Time, it talks about the strength of a Roman army. It talks about how many cavalry there were in there. And I would be basically saying, turn to that page in my book. So anyone who doesn't have a copy of my book need to tell me tonight, because we'll bang out a copy tonight to you, so you can have it for next week. So that's one of the questions I'm going to ask you in the break. It's really important you have a copy of my book. So anyway, it talks, the Britons drew up their forces on the higher ground with their cavalry and chariots, right? Ebbsfleet, obviously. Is it? There you go. The Britons fight with chariots in the following manner. First, they drive about in all directions and throw their weapons, and generally disorder the ranks of the enemy by the very terror of their horses and the noise of their wheels. For me, that doesn't sound real. Personally, thinking as an archaeologist, thinking, right, that's another point I want to make tonight. I've got so much going in my head. And the point I want to make tonight, right, is that I'm not completely sure I'm going to do this. I might, when we go after AD 43, I might not do any historical sources to do with Roman Britain at all, right? I might just focus on the archaeology. And there's one reason for that. And you can discuss that with me in the break and say, actually, Carl, we want you to discuss the historical sources, right? Or we just want you to do the archaeology. Personally, I prefer to do the archaeology. And the reason why I prefer to do the archaeology is going back to my nuts and bolts of originally getting into archaeology, right? When I was like a late teenager, I thought, if I'm going to do archaeology, I'm just going to focus on the archaeology. I'm not going to do any of the historical records at all. I'm just going to focus on the archaeology, right? I'm only going to do archaeology because when we think about the archaeology, I think personally, I don't know if this is you, right? I know I'm teaching this, but I don't know if it's you guys, right? But if I did the Boudiccan rebellion, looking at the archaeological evidence, it will be so much more interesting than looking at Suetonius Paulinus coming back from his visits in North Wales with limited archaeological evidence, looking at the Battle of Watling Street, which we don't have a single piece of archaeological evidence for at all, right? But just focusing on the archaeological evidence for Colchester, which we've already looked at in brief, Londinium and Verulamium and just basically looking at that and saying, right, there's no history, don't care about that, it's the archaeology. That's what I might do. I'm not really sure about that yet. I'm not really sure it's a good move, but but this is why I originally got into archaeology, to look at the archaeological evidence, not the history, right? History lies, history is wrong. You know, we even see, for example, this is a really extreme example. We even hear people talking about the concentration camps didn't exist. They were not real. They were invented, right? And some people actually believe that, right? But in the archaeology, we know the concentration camps did exist, right? But it's not the point. Anyway, back to this, back to Julius Caesar, back to 54 BC. So when they have thrown the enemy into confusion, they leap from their chariots and fight on foot. This sounds to me as if Julius Caesar's saying that this is what happens usually, right? Not necessarily to his army, right? So chapter 11 and 12, how much of this is real, right? So Cassivellaunus, there we go, Cassivellaunus, the leader of the Cativellani people, right? So Cassivellaunus was chosen by common consent commander-in-chief against Caesar, right? Cassivellaunus. Now, Cassivellaunus is only mentioned by Julius Caesar, right? We know about the Cativellani tribe, people north of the River Thames, but Cassivellaunus, there you go, whose territories were separated from the maritime states by the River Thames, about 80 miles from the sea. Love it. So the Thames can be forded at one place only, and that with difficulty. Caesar, leading his legions across, although the water reached to their shoulders, put the enemy to flight. And then obviously there's all these other missing bits with all of this. And then the states of the Britons, which are called maritime and inhabited by those who passed over from Belgium for the purpose of plunder and making war. Chapter 22. The interior parts of Britain are inhabited by tribes who say they are indigenous to the island. It's quite controversial, isn't it? Right. So chapter 23, they use either brass or iron rings determined at a certain weight as their money. It's getting there. Chapter 24, the climate is more temperate than in Gaul, and the cold being less severe. And 25, the island is triangular in shape. One side faces Gaul. Well, that's a really nice piece of archaeological evidence. When I say archaeological evidence, it is pseudo-archaeology, because the only way you're going to work out if Britain's triangular shaped is if you had prior intelligence, right? So Julius Caesar's been able to build up this intelligence from 56 and 55 BC into 54 BC. So there we go. Having received hostages and imposed a tribute, Caesar led his army back to Gaul. And that's basically as far as we're going to go tonight, right? With that. Now, with all of that said, with all of that thinking about the history, thinking about in regards to the whole Julius Caesar stuff, right? It then leads us into thinking about Caligula, which is going to be in the backs of our minds tonight. But I did promise to do lots of other little articles before we actually head into Caligula and these coins. And that's exactly where we're going to go now. Right, so here we go. Oh, yeah, hang on a minute. Hang on, I lost where I'm supposed to be. Right, so now we're gonna sort of chill out from the likes of Julius Caesar, and we're gonna crack over to the likes of Caligula. Right, I wanted to rush that bit about Julius Caesar, right, and the reason why I rushed it is because we done a lot of it, but I just want to give you some more background. That's why, and it sort of tastes our sense of understanding for what we're going to do with Caligula. Right, so let's moving on. So this is one of the articles for the week. I'm not sure who sent this to me or whether I found this myself or whoever. But basically a trepan skull of Viking era man found in mass grave. So again, looking at some general archaeological things being reported to us now, alive in the past week. Right, Cambridge Archaeological Unit, and the skull itself being found. Skeleton, there we go, the 4th of February, the skeleton of a young 6 foot 5 inch tall Viking era man who had undergone trepanation has been found in a mass grave, right? So really, really interesting stuff there. Very, very interesting, right? But this is what this is. This is associated with a much wider burial that we've known about. But what we're finding is that it's that thing about history and archaeology. It's trying to think that the past is a much bigger world. The past is a sense of understanding where we can start to think that these people are a little bit more like us than meets the eye. So the large hole there is was 3 centimeters in size. An initial radiocarbon work suggests the man was alive between AD 772 to AD 891. No, he didn't live over 100 years. He lived within that period, basically. So a hole had been bored in the skull while he was alive. And we know that. And how do we know that? Really interesting, because you can see that it's rounded, right? It's actually started to, the bone has actually started to grow back, right? Because it's rounded. It's not sharp. It's not angular, right? It's rounded. It's smooth. So that's why we know that this person survived. This guy survived open brain surgery, amazingly enough, over 1,200 years ago. It has signs of healing before his remains were flung into a burial pit with 9 other men, some dismembered. Bone expert Dr. Byers suggests he had suffered from a gland tumor in the brain, causing headaches. That the trepanning may have been an attempt to alleviate. So in other words, you cut a piece of the skull away so that you could relieve the headaches, and he survived it. Amazing, yeah. So this grisly discoveries were found during a University of Cambridge training excavation just outside the city last year. And it's sort of, we know about his height, 5 foot 6 inches. Trepan skulls have been found all over the world, including in ancient Greece and the Roman world. And we know about trepanning not just in the Viking period, not in these other periods, but actually as far back as the Neolithic period. People surviving open brain surgery in the Neolithic period. So we're talking 5,000 years ago, and people actually surviving. The practice was thought to relieve symptoms of conditions such as migraines, seizures, along with disorders now known to be psychological. Right, so we'll go with that one. And cutting bits of people's skull and brain away as recent as the 1960s were being done in asylums to sort of deal with psychological problems. So it's not something, and it's actually still being done today, but actually under sort of better conditions. The individual was between 17 and 24 years old at the time of death and had been flung face down, jumbled in with other remains archaeologists found, probably killed in battle, right? Now, a bit of Roman stuff now. We're over to Cirencester. And we're looking at, for example, wonderful mosaics that have been put on display in this wonderful museum in Cirencester. So I don't know if any of you have ever been to the museum in Cirencester, but it's an absolutely brilliant museum. And I've been lucky enough to, as part of my university dissertation, I was able to go into into the museum itself, and as I'm leaving, this woman comes up to me, Emma, and says, "Oh, how are you? I haven't seen you for years." And I said, "What?" And she said she used to work for me, and I just thought, "Oh, hello, Emma, I remember you." And fair enough. So basically, what this is about, it's about the return of mosaics from the British Museum to other parts of Britain. Right. So, beautiful there. And again, a lioness. Where could this lioness have come from? So British Museum fragments of Roman mosaic to return to the Cotswolds for the first time in over 200 years. Right. And you'll be surprised to hear that the British Museum has been there for quite a long time. Right. So we've had the British Museum since I think about, where is it, 1750 odd. So so two fragments of what's known as the Orpheus mosaic, right, have been sent back to Cirencester for the first time in more than 200 years. The fragments which depict a leopard, a boar, a hunting dog, and also a variety of birds were unearthed in 1812 at a Roman villa in the village of Withington. Soon after their discovery, they were lifted and taken to the British Museum, where they have remained in storage, with only occasional public display over the last two centuries. So it's now back at the Cotswold Museum. It says it's an agreed loan. It might stay there. And back to this image again. So back to this. So the fragments have now been put on display as known as Project Orpheus, to associate with the Orpheus mosaics. And obviously, it's the exact location is Barton Farm, Cirencester. It's been placed there, and the Emma Stewart, the museum director, said in my many presentations about the Orpheus mosaics, I often made mention of the importance of the number of mosaics of this theme that have been discovered in Britain. To have the Withington fragments on display from Barton Farm, which is nearby, at the Carinium Museum, has been on her wish list for a very, very long time. And one of the things that the British Museum is aiming to do is to circulate their collection around the country a little bit more, and you know, like for example the Mole Cape to North Wales, for example, but that's not going to happen because we don't have secure facilities to take a gold cape to North Wales. But the British Museum are naturally looking at sort of sending bits of archaeology from bits of the country to be displayed. And it's perhaps surprising, very few mosaics from Roman Britain are available for public view in museums in Britain. And the vast majority of mosaics have either been lost, damaged, beyond recovery, or still lie buried under the soil. So one thing that we do as archaeologists these days is that we rebury them. We photograph them, we rebury them, and hopefully in a few hundred years' time they'll be able to be seen again. So I just wanted to bring that to you, which has been in the news very, very recently. And we've done the cave of swimmers. So what we're going to do, we're going to move on to this other thing that was in the news. Now, we've had a little bit of a treat this week because there's been a few finds. There's been two sort of finds associated with a nautical theme this week anyway. One from the Arctic, and obviously this one. So they're looking at timbers that have been found on the beach. Tom Cousins, a big sort of maritime expert from Bournemouth University, and there's a few nice videos about these timbers. And these are associated with a wreck that is in two that went down in 1831. These were actually first revealed in 2004, and what they're going to do now is remove these timbers off the beach and put them somewhere, trying to unite them with the ones that are actually still in the sea, right? Because it broke away from the main vessel, and they're hoping to sort of put the story together. So it's unusual that you get this type of archaeology in two different places that have been united together as a piece of archaeology that can be displayed in a museum. So again, looking at the preservation of that, I don't know if it's the port or the starboard side, but obviously you can get some really nice ribs there. They are in a good set of preservation. So when initially they were discovered, right, in 2004, right, on the beach, and obviously they've got more evidence from the 1990s from what they can actually see in the water. So part of a historical shipwreck has been revealed on a beach in the wake of Storm Chandra. The exposed timbers were discovered at the National Trust-owned Studland Bay in Dorset on the 28th of January. Do you know, I can't say Dorset without saying it in a Dorset accent. I don't know why. Marine archaeologists from Bournemouth University believe it forms a missing piece of the Swash Channel wreck that was first discovered in the 1990s in a key shipping approach to Poole Harbour. But the stuff on the beach, discovered in 2004 initially, it is thought that the wreck is most likely the Fame from Hoorn. The Fame from Hoorn, an armed Dutch merchant ship that ran aground and sank in 1631. The wreck, the section of ship thought to be part of the hull, measures approximately 6 to 2 meters wide. So there it is. You know, this is what they're. You know, that's really nice there. And a large layer of planking is missing from the vessel's interior, which indicates the remains have been buried in sand since the 1630s, according to the National Trust. And there it is. That's what they think it looked like. So experts believe the remains are from this section of the hull of the Dutch merchant ship. And there it is. They're just showing it in red there. Shame, really, they got a bit of a sign on there. So the Fame of Hoorn, and there it is a little bit more. So Tracy Churcher, general manager from the National Trust in Purbeck. I'm always astounded by the history we find at Studland Bay, but this has been a real treasure. So a timber treasure. And interestingly enough, folks, this is so this will link with the coins that we're going to look at today from Caligula. Timber found on a beach now, it can is now covered by the Treasure Trove Act, right? So you can't just move it from a beach and chuck it in your attic. You know, it is prosecutable by an imprisonment term for something like this. So it's good that not just gold and silver things are covered by the Treasure Act, everything's covered by the Treasure Act, hence why the term real treasure, because it technically under law, timber is now treasure. So the wooden tree nails are still in place and holding after 400 years, close on 5 years there, were a testament to the craftsmanship at the time. Final confirmation of the wreck's origins. Now, this, Andy knows this is always a problem. You know, they find out that they find out it's probably from another wreck, or it is the wreck, and shipwreck timbers are incredibly difficult to work out what vessels they come from. Mind you, if we can work out that the depend on how it's built, right, then we can get a good idea it's actually from that wonderful vessel. So final confirmation of the wreck's origins will come from dendrochronology testing that will assess when and where the timbers used to build the ship were grown. That's a key. Was it timbers grown in the Low Countries, and whether they match those previously analysed from the Swash shipwreck. The team, so they call it a Swash shipwreck because that's its specified name, but it hasn't got the exact name. There it is of the Fame from Hoorn yet. So the team at Bournemouth University have applied to Historical England for a grant to excavate the timbers on the presumption it is part of the protected wreck, and hopefully they can match all this stuff up. So look at that there. It's really interesting that these have actually survived, and obviously erosion's actually taken place on this as it's sort of been shown and exposed, and bits have been removed. But again, really fine state of preservation after 400 years. So there we go. Heffin, marine archaeologist from Historical England, said the Swash Channel wreck is one of only 57 shipwrecks around the coast of England designated under the Protection of Wrecks Act 1973. Right? So I'll give you an idea how many shipwrecks are to be found around the British coastline, right? So if you look at South Wales, for example, there are actually thousands of them. Between the island of Anglesey and the mainland, there are quite a large number of shipwrecks indeed. But we can't protect them all. So when we go down to the south coast, there's a hell of a lot of ships on the south coast, but we're only protecting a small number of them because we can't put all our resources to protect thousands of shipwrecks, right? And this is the same decision that we've got to make with land archaeology. Under the Scheduled Monuments Act, which protects England, Wales, and Scotland. All archaeology which is Paleolithic is protected under the Act. Most archaeology that is Mesolithic is protected under the Act. A big proportion of Neolithic sites are protected under the Act, right? But then less and less Bronze Age sites are protected, Iron Age sites, not all the Roman sites in Britain are protected. By the time you get to the medieval period, only a small number of medieval sites are protected. So then you get into the period of shipwrecks. Firmly dated remains of vessels predating 1700 are exceptionally rare. Even when we find a cannon associated with a wreck or something like that, it's you've got to be very careful how you work out the provenance of things. So we can't say for certain that these fragments come from that wreck, but they could do. Protected wrecks have legal protection, meaning that any disturbance or interference is only permitted under an official license. Same with scheduled ancient monument sites that we just mentioned. It's hoped that timbers revealed at Studland will join the collection currently displayed at Poole Museum. And until then, visitors have been urged to help protect the site by not touching the exposed timbers. So there we go. And there's the timbers out in the sea in 2030. These are the ones in the sea, and the ones that we looked at are the ones on the beach. So if this is all from the same vessel, right, from a Dutch vessel, that would be absolutely brilliant. So it's matching all these things together. So the Famous Horn has been estimated to be around 40 meters long, 10 meters wide, 15 meters high, would have been capable of carrying more than 40 guns to defend itself against pirates during voyages to the Caribbean to bring back salt. Records state that all 45 members of the crew abandoned the ship safely when it grounded, but the wreck was soon looted by people in the area. Well, it would do. Happens. Now, before we sort of get on to my images of coins and stuff tonight, and then obviously the invasion of 56 BC, what can I tell you about that? I might actually do the invasion of 56 BC before we actually have the break, to be honest with you. But this was another thing. This was also mentioned. Goff wanted me to mention this from Wednesday. Ancient seafarers helped shape Arctic ecosystems. So humans might have been sailing the sea between Greenland and Canada as long as it's been unfrozen. Archaeological evidence suggests. So crossing over 50 kilometers between Kitsusut and shores of northwest Greenland is difficult today. But even ancient seafarers were able to repeatedly make the journey. So what this means for, the Arctic, what this does mean for the Arctic is that in the high Arctic, right, known as the Carry Islands, nestled between northwest Greenland and northeast Canada, the surrounding seas are perilous and traveling there is difficult even with modern boats. However, new archaeological evidence suggests ancient humans managed to sail to the islands too, with all those condition changes. And this is really interesting, where we're seeing movements of people, Greenland and the Arctic. Early settlers lived on these sort of desolate islands, supposedly, right, between 4,500. That's sort of in the British Neolithic, right, slightly different with the States, and 2,700 years ago. Archaeologists had long assumed they were land bound and able to cross the seas surrounding them after the ice that once blanketed the area had melted. But new research in antiquity suggests that these settlers formed seafaring communities that existed for at least as long as the area, a technical name, the Polylina, if that's the right thing, a technical name for the frozen area, frozen water amid sea ice, indicating that humans have long had a hand in shaping the dynamic Arctic ecosystem as far back as 4,500 years ago. So we saw a space for archaeology to bring towards the deep history of the environment and learn more about stewardship through time, how they manage the landscape. So in the past, archaeologists assumed humans made their way to the Arctic by following musk oxen and often onshore prey. But though more recent evidence has suggested otherwise, it's been hard to dispel the old theory, particularly because remnants of boats and fishing supplies made from organic materials were largely missing from the archaeological record. But now we're starting to say that people managed to get to the Arctic. So this stuff about Caligula, here it is. But do we think about, do I start off with sort of looking at the other invasion, right? Do I go back? And I think I do, because if we're going to look at, in a nice bit of detail, looking at, for example, when I found my little bit of a map, if I want to think about this other invasion of 56 BC, the one that nobody talks about, was there an invasion of 56 BC? And there's no written evidence about. So that was a question that I was asking. This is the 54 BC stuff. What exactly happened in 56 BC, right? So this is the question that I asked. Now, I've got all my notes here. Right? I'm just scrolling for my notes, right? So when we go to Julius Caesar, right? Julius Caesar mentions about the 56 BC invasion in Book 3. And he mentions the authority of the Veneti is great along the entire seashore because they possess very small ships. He's talking about northern France, the Gallic area, with which they are accustomed to sail to Britain. And they surpass the others in knowledge and experience of naval matters. So this is talking about 56 BC. They thought they would be in great danger. This is in Book 3, Chapter 9. Great danger if, after having drawn almost all the tribes into revolt, they believed that assistance would fail them not only from the Romans, but also from the Britons. So contextually, about 56 BC, was there an attempted invasion? What exactly happened? So if contextually, 56 BC, Britain appears only as a place sailed to. Britain appear only as external allies to the people in northern France against the Romans. No Roman movement towards Britain is described. So again, why is 56 BC mentioned? Was there ever an attempted invasion in 56 BC? So this is one thing that I wanted to ask. I thought, why have I missed this out? Why haven't I even mentioned it? Right? Why haven't we really done it? Right? So there's an important context for this. I'm mentioning 56 BC because this might have this may help us understand Caligula's invasion of AD 40 and the language in what that invasion was about, the archaeological evidence of Caligula's invasion in AD 40. And I'm calling it an invasion. But 56 BC, Julia is said to have done something in 56 BC. What's going on? So 56 BC, Britain is known. We by this stage, Julius Caesar probably knows it's triangular shaped, Rome has a connection with Britain. We've already discussed this in 56 BC. Britain is supportive of Rome's enemies. So it might really be that Julius Caesar's interested very much in Britain in 56 BC to try and stop any support of people in northern France. So is it just rhetoric? When Rome talks about Britain, rhetoric often runs ahead of reality. So what does this mean? If Julius Caesar's saying that, you know, something needs to be done about the British, right? And he doesn't go ahead with doing it. Nobody ridicules him, but they ridicule Caligula. But I'm saying that Caligula did more than just talk about invading Britain. So Caesar does not rhetorically claim Britain in 56 BC because nothing happened. Now, historians, when we look at 56 BC and what is actually mentioned, you know, I asked the question I was asking was, what would Romans landing even mean before 56 BC? You know, before Julius Caesar, Rome did not run Atlantic exploration missions. Long-range reconnaissance landings out at sea. Imperial scouting without a war context. Any landing in Britain in 56 BC or before might have been accidental, emergency landing, commercial diplomatic contact, military reconnaissance. It could have been that maybe a Roman ship had been blown to Britain in 56 BC, in theory. In reality, Roman shipping before Julius Caesar was Mediterranean focused, however. Atlantic sailing was dangerous and unfamiliar. Roman captains avoided the channel unless necessary. If a Roman ship had landed accidentally, it would leave no institutional memory. It would not count as Rome landing in Britain. It would not explain later strategic knowledge. So this possibly is historically meaningless. So, 56 BC again, military reconnaissance before 56 BC or before 55 BC. There's no evidence at all. There's no evidence other than people saying that something may have happened, right? The decisive silence of Rome's sources before 56 BC and 56 BC itself. No one claimed to have come to Britain at all, right? But in 55 BC, they did. Julius Caesar boasted that he invaded Britain in 55 BC. So 56 BC, and we'll get on to we'll have our break in a few moments. And again, I want to bury this 56 BC because it's very confusing why it's ever mentioned in the first place anyway. So 56 BC, Britain is politically entangled with Gaul. British leaders aid Roman enemies. Julius Caesar becomes strategically interested. So that's why there's a plan to invade Britain. But nothing really happened in 56 BC. Julius Caesar was just talking about it. He was talking about the possibility of coming over to Britain. It was all rhetorical. Nothing really happened. It was planning. And some of that planning may have actually happened, that some boats come over to see what was going on. But other than that, 56 BC is a little bit meaningless in history. But when it comes to Caligula, we'll see where we're going to go, and that's exactly what we're going to do for the entire of the second half tonight. So, what we're going to do, we're going to end on these images and the new version that came out last year, the uncut version that came out last year. I do believe Roger has watched 5 times, and he stylizes his life upon it. But other than that, and he agrees. Let's see what we've got. Let's see. Right. Oh, Judith joined us. Brilliant. Right. Okay. Anne, anything you'd like to say, babe?
No, I haven't. Thank you. But it was quite a nice introduction into Caligula. I felt you were moving well towards him all the way through. So let's look at the next bit.
Yes, that's what we're doing. We're going to look at Caligula's coins. We're going to discuss all that. Thank you very much, Anne. Yes, good. Right, Judith.
I forgot it was Tuesday. I'm so sorry. Don't go there.
Right, okay, go for it.
Very interesting. I've just joined the bit where you were talking about the young people with the head. I can imagine a migraine back in the day will have been possessed. They'd have done anything to get rid of it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, we're just going to cut a bit of your head away. That's fine. Brilliant.
Yeah, but
excellent.
Well, it's easy to say that when you've got modern medicines, but if you haven't, it must have been absolutely crippling.
Exactly. And you just, I don't have words for it. The boy could have, in all intents and purposes, may have lived another 20, 30, 40 years, but he was buried with another 9 guys, and obviously they were killed in some kind of skirmish, and they all ended up in a hole in the ground. So he was able enough to go into a battle situation, to join a Viking ship, to sail from Norway over to Britain, to join these guys and end up getting killed. But obviously he must have been well enough to be able to do that. So it obviously cured him.
We'll never know, really, will we?
No, we won't. It could be worse. Margaret.
Well, he had a fine set of teeth, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well,
maybe he was grinding his teeth and that gave him a bad headache.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
I wanted to put all those things in the first part because I knew it was going to be a bit of a distraction. But then what we've got is Caligula this week, part 1, part 2, and then we've got part 3, and we've got then we start moving over to Claudius. Oh yes, right, yes. I got to ask you this. First things first, right? I asked everybody the question, should I just not bother with history after Claudius? That's one thing. And the second thing is, has everybody got a copy of my book? Because they're going to need it, right? So we're going to, Anne, would you prefer me doing archaeology going forward as of, say, next week?
Yes.
Or, rather than history?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, we're getting there. That's one tick.
No, it's just that I've never really in the past been interested in history, and doing archaeology with you has enthused me for the past, which history never did. So maybe I'm not right on what you're saying, but that's why I feel so positive about it.
We could try. Do you know how intriguing this is going to be? Right, we're gonna look at Boudica, right? But just look at the archaeological evidence without mentioning Cassius Dio and Tacitus once. Oh my God, but this is going to be so much, right? So, all right, that's your say, Margaret. What do you think about that, Margaret? Oh, by the way, anyone who needs a copy of the book can just tell me. If not, I presume you've all got a copy.
I've got one.
You've got 4, right, Margaret? Anything you want to? What's just pure archaeology or history and archaeology?
Well, it is an archaeology group, isn't it?
Oh, right. Hang on, you've answered that one. Right, good. Thank you, Margaret. We'll move on. Drina.
Just archaeology, please. I've got a question about the coins.
We might answer that. Well, just do the question.
Why are there so few of Caligula's coins? Do they get melted down? Did everybody hate him, so they thought we only get rid of all his faces on the coins? Or
it's the damnatio. Basically, I'll be going into real detail about this over this week and next week. So the damnatio, right? This guy needs to be expunged and raised from history. We don't like the guy, but however, when you look at maybe what I should do, right? I'm just gonna do the historians, right? I'll just talk about what the historians say. I'm just going to do that first without looking at any of the research stuff I've done. I've just done that, and I'm just going to do that raw, right? And that it's like some of the historians didn't even mention any of his silly stuff, and then thinking, hang on a minute, why aren't they mentioning any of this stuff? And most of the ones who were really terrible about Tacitus, No, one of the ones who were really terrible about Caligula are just are the ones who write years after, and the ones who actually sort of knew him don't seem to write in the same way.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
right, David, you now.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, are you staying with us, David?
No.
All right then. Okay, David, we'll say good night. See you night, David.
Bye.
Bye, David.
Bye.
Night,
Bye,
mate.
David.
Hey, David.
Have a good one, Dave. I likes his red and black top. It's really good.
Mhm.
At least we had a straight answer off him this week. Right? Yeah. Right. We had Judith back then. Judith. Right. Judith. Is it just going to be history and archaeology, or just archaeology? Come on, Judith. You might
I think
get
the
the
archaeology,
overall.
because history's just made up a lot of the time, isn't it? And you see something
Right.
and guess what it might be. But archaeology is proper evidence, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you want another 4 copies of the book, Judith?
You're all right, thanks.
Well, Judith used them to prop up her bed. Right, Willie. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I'm interested in the archaeology, but on a side note, I will continue to delve into the history and create my little presentations and make them available to anybody who wants it.
Oh, that's what I usually say to women. It's available to anyone who wants it.
Yeah.
And for the advert,
Right.
hang on, what am I buying? Oh, it won't even show up.
No.
No. Come
Oh,
on.
my
yeah.
book! My book! There it is!
Yeah.
My book's there! We got it! Yeah, it is!
Yeah.
There it is! Mine's blurred as well! Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is! Snap! If we didn't blur this bloody thing, yeah, blur it. Good. Dirty Rog, come on, let's have your response.
Archaeology.
Do you know what? Why don't people tell me this sooner? Right, Roger. Do you want another 4 copies of my book?
I think I've got one. I dug up the Vale Morgan one, but I think the other one's there as well, so definitely had it.
Yeah, well, you got to make sure you have it for next week, Rog. You know, don't let me down.
I'll check in a minute now once we can have a break.
Yeah, Rog.
Can't be in 2 places.
Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, you bitch.
Carl, just make
Well,
one
there
point.
we go.
Very good.
Very good.
In your book, Carl, you refer to map references that are using the British Ordnance Survey system, which is great if you have access to British Survey ordnance maps, which I don't. So I've had to look and convert reference points to find them on latitude and longitude in order to look at the sites on Google Earth, which makes it a little bit more different and sometimes a little bit more exciting and interesting. But there you go.
Fair enough. Well, the thing is, right. Going forward, when we're looking at, say, Caligula, right, we can only base it on the archaeology, right, and because we're going to do the Caligula history stuff today, right. So going on to next week, we've only got the archaeology, and the point is, that I was going to go down the lane of looking at. It was like, right, I'll just spew this out now because I'm not doing this week. But so basically, we've got quite a few Julius Caesar coins, but you've had them for a while, right? And then you've got a few Augustus coins. You've got a few Tiberius coins, right? And you don't have many Caligula coins, and you've got to have loads of Claudius coins, right? Now the point is that you'd usually have coin hoards with Augustus, Tiberius, and Claudius coins, but no Caligula coins. So the value of finding any Caligula coins is massive, right? And this is what I'm seeing, right? And I do one archive of material tonight, and we do more next week, right? And then the point is thrown out there, right? And you start to see a picture. So that's what I'm going to do. Right, Andy, anything you want to say, babe, before we have a break?
Yeah, a couple of things. I was wondering,
with Caesar's invasion, whether he did that just as a sort of not a preliminary one, but a part-time one, just to remind the British tribes that he could do this and that they had the power to do that, to stop them supporting the Gauls.
Now, when you think about Volasius, and he's going out in 55 to get intelligence for Julius Caesar, and you're thinking, well, you know, a lot more has happened, right? But there's one point that I was seeing when I was making that comment about the Romans didn't like to go out into deep water, right? There's 2 points. One is completely conflicting with the other point, right? So whenever you talk about this, we always talk about the Roman coastal hugger vessels, right? That they would stay near the coast within like 5 miles so they could see the coast, right? And they would just they wouldn't go out too deep. They would just hug near the coast, and they would just that port. They would just go a little bit further, that port and that one, and eventually get all the way to the coast, into the English Channel, right? That makes perfect sense. But then. Oh God, do I tell you something today? Yeah, I've been contacted by some people in Brazil that really like my work. And that ties me in with my friend in Brazil, who I haven't been in touch with for years. And she used to say, look, in the 1990s, they were actually finding Roman amphora in the bays around the Brazilian coast, which were hushed up. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, right? How is a Roman vessel blown off course going all the way to Brazil accidentally? That's a bit more than 5 miles away from the coast, isn't it? And you start to think, well, is there something in this, right? How did Roman amphora get to Brazil, right? So when I'm reading that, I'm thinking, well, is it really true that the Romans were just only comfortable with hugging the coastline, or is there more to this? And I think there's more to it.
Maybe it was a message in an amphora as opposed to in a bottle.
Oh yeah. Hang on a minute. So you can imagine it now. So you sent like 1,000 amphora out at sea. They all end up in Rio de Janeiro Bay. Oh yeah, really? It's the same as aliens, isn't it? They built Stonehenge.
There are two types of navigation as well. There's like line of sight, which is coastal navigation, which you really need to be able to see where you're going or be able to see it by the end of the day. So like crossing the Irish Sea or the North Sea and things is
can't see anything.
Doable. Yeah, it's doable because you know you're going to see something along if you hold that course, and you can hold the course quite easily. But when you start getting out into the Atlantic, and when it's you know weeks, you've got to have another way of navigating. So,
are there many sandbanks in the English Channel?
Yes, good wind.
Only one or two, yeah.
Well, we know that now, but would the Romans have drift a few times?
They'd have found them. I think everybody knew. On that coastline, exactly where everything was in those days. Yeah, so
did they? Yeah.
Well, they had to, otherwise they didn't survive. So,
and to be able to sail a fleet, you know that takes experienced sailors to do that. You know, it's not.
And you use local pilots. Yeah,
exactly. But by the way, we're just going to go a little bit far out of our comfort zone with a massive fleet. You know, hopefully it'll work out. You know,
you know the ships that we talked about last week. The what are they called? The
triremes. Yeah.
Were they basically warships?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So they wouldn't have been carrying cargo, for instance.
The thing is when you quantify this, right? You've got you're filling the vessel up with amphora, right? You're not going to have anyone oaring the thing, you know. Having a large number of people with oars to move the vessel from A to B is taking up space, and that space could be better spent, right, with your goods. So you're going to be a sailed vessel, right? So a trireme is naturally going to be a vessel of war, because it's extremely expensive having a vessel that big with with 100 burly guys on it, right? They may be slaves, but you've got to feed them.
Yeah.
You've got to have people to look after them. You know, it's a lot of money. So
and you've got to carry a lot of supplies if you go more than a few hours. So.
Slaves are expensive. You know, they're going to die otherwise. What's the point of it? I tell you what, if you've got 100 slaves, right, and you don't feed them, and you're 100 miles out in the sea, right, and they all die, what's happening then?
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Oh my God, they're all dead. What do we do now?
Put the sail up. Yeah.
Yeah, put the sail up. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
The other thing with
Can I change my mind?
What?
Can I change my mind? Can we have a little bit of history, but mostly archaeology?
Have
a little bit of a mix. Have a little bit of history in there as well.
Yeah, you could. That could be a carry-on film there. Oh, let's have a little bit more. Matron, shut your face.
Context.
Oh, shut up, you tart. Yeah, but the thing is, you see, I could actually be I could actually keep everybody happy and meet you halfway because I could basically say, oh, by the way, we've got a Latin inscription this week. That's history. So, you know, that's archaeology and history at the same time. Job done.
Yes.
Well, that's what we're going to do anyway, so
just to mix it up a bit anyway. Yeah, all right, thank you.
I tell you what, we'll mention King Arthur every now and again. Oh, by the way, by the way, what we should do, we should have a competition on to see how many times I mention Lloyd George over the course of a year.
Yeah. Lloyd George bingo.
No, not Boy George, Lloyd George.
No, that's what I said.
We're gonna. There's no reason we can't mention Boy George.
That bit of the shipwreck that washed up. There's an interesting legal issue there in that anything that washes up on the Coast Guard comes under the receiver of wrecks, which is controlled by the Coast Guard. So,
oh God,
yeah, no, well, that would protect it instantly. So I'm amazed that nobody's looked into that. It's usually with goods that have come off ships and things to stop, wrecking and stuff. But the fact that it's got some historical value, they could do that. Though I didn't say that because the Coast Guard's team down there will not like that because they have to then go and stand there and guard it.
Did the Mary Rose, Henry VIII ship, that was sunk about 100 years earlier, wasn't it?
That was sunk in 1548, 7, something like that. 1547.
Did any of that wash up on shore, or was it all in very deep water?
No, it wasn't in very deep water. Its masts were still sticking out.
He's right.
Quite shallow. So yes, all the stuff on the
they're not
decks
sticking out now.
Washed out. No, they're not now. No.
That seems to have been better preserved than this one.
It's covered by sand.
Yeah, but the stuff what you're talking about, some of the stuff is actually in the water, which is really well preserved. But this is under sand.
Okay.
So the Mary Rose. Oh God, damn it! I was out by 2 years. 1545.
Depends on the currents as well.
Yeah,
how they're affecting it where it went down. Most ships get wrecked.
A fascinating story, and those preservation differences are huge. The sand and silt can be protected layers, but each site has its own quirks. Honestly, it's all part of the charm of history, right?
Carl's voice has changed, hasn't it?
Oh, lovely. Thank you, love. Right. Okay.
Can I ask you something else?
Oh,
yeah. Well,
Andy was saying about whether the invasion was like, oh, I can still do this if I want to.
Yeah.
What's the communication like? Is it within the British tribes? Would it be very good? Would it frighten them all, or just the ones that saw him?
The thing is, that's a really deep question, right? And that is actually, yeah, you've actually hit upon something now, which I'm going to do now, right? I'm going to do it now, right? Because I was going to mention this, right? So, if we go back, right, to I don't know, 56 BC, right, and you sit on a beach, right, now on the south coast and you're surrounded by seashells, which would eventually be collected by Caligula's soldiers. But anyway, you're surrounded by seashells and you're thinking, right, okay, how do I get a message to the other side of Britain, right? The question is, you've got to ask yourself, why would I want to send a message to the other side of Britain? And what is the point in sending a message? And why am I doing it anyway, right? And you're just thinking, well, when you think about most of the communities in Britain were very insular, right? So let's look at this modern day and age, right? In Cymru, Wales now, Roger knows what I'm talking about. There's a very toxic political election coming up, right? And it involves quite a number of political parties. Lots of those political parties will not be seen in the same room together, let alone communicate, right? So if you take that and you put it back into this period in 56 BC, and you're thinking, right, those people ain't talking to those people. Why? And these people are thinking, oh, why do I even need to speak to them? We're in our nice little valley. We need nothing to do with anybody else. We've got everything, right? And that's the land that we're talking about. There are whole communities that are simply out of this thing, right? And I know that as a fact. And the reason why I know that as a fact, when the Roman era spreading across Britain, you've got whole areas where there's no sense of Rome at all, right? With the greatest extreme, you can go to Caithness in northern Scotland, right? They may be in connection with Roman traders, but as far as they're concerned, it's just not part of their world, right? And that's the point. We think, right, this is the point, right? We think we get into Roman era Britain, everybody's Roman, overnight, there's no more roundhouses, there's roads, there's aqueducts, there's peace, there's viniculture, there's coinage, there's brothels in all of Roger's houses, there's everything, right? But it's not like that. It's not like that at all. So the sense of Roman Britain is imagined, right? So when you get to these people sitting on a beach, right, when you think about communication across Britain, right, it's very likely that the only people who are sort of aware what's going on with the Romans are in fact the people who are directly coming in contact with them. And it's whenever we read the history books, it's like everybody in Britain's up in arms, people in Rumney wouldn't give a damn, right? People in lots of places wouldn't give a damn. They wouldn't even know what was going on. They wouldn't even care, right? And in many ways, let's go back to politics, right? There's people who don't even know that there's an election coming up in Wales, right? People who vote in council elections all across England, right? There's some people who don't even know whether it just passes, just another event, right? So I've used that as a metaphor, but in many ways, that's how this world was like. It was very disconnected. There was no internet. You remember what it was like before the internet, right? Life was a lot easier and quieter, right? And you could lose touch with somebody and never see them again, right? But and they can't find you again, right? And in many ways, that's what Britain was like. Oh yeah, and I've forgotten what the point was, right? My other point is this. The other point is this. Is that I said this to you before. I believe that there's a certain point in British history that things have been completely erased, right? And what I mean by that is that I'm more and more looking within the landscape that's around me, right? And I can't think for the life of me why when I'm being asked to do archaeological work for people, right? Because when I did a local report on this landscape, and I was being paid to do a report on this landscape in the area I am in West Wales, right? The history went as follows. It was right, loads of prehistoric stuff, lots of Bronze Age, Iron Age stuff, right? and then suddenly there's nothing for about 1,200 years, right? And then we come into the medieval period. There's nothing in my report. There's nothing. There's no evidence that I can find in any records. No archaeological work. No nothing. Right. So you go from like the birth of Christ all the way to about, I don't know, 1,200, right? For over 1,200 years. Then you get some medieval stuff, and then suddenly there's nothing again. It's like suddenly from about roughly from about the 1600s to about the 1700s, there's a massive gap. It's almost as if the entire landscape's been cleared of everything, right? And I find this very strange in British history, particularly where I am. Eh?
A lot of plagues wiping
No,
out
it's not.
communities.
It's not just that. What I'm trying to get at, if I go to York, there are medieval buildings still. If I go to York, there's Roman stuff. If I go to York, there's Viking stuff, right? If I go to Sussex, right, I can wander in a house which is made in the medieval period, right? I can wander. I can look at some Anglo-Saxon stuff, right? I can look at some Roman stuff. But in certain parts of Britain, there's whole gaps in history, and there's nothing. It's odd. It really is. Anyway, let's have a break because we're not going to be doing any Caligula at all. I want us back at 10 to 9, and it's now 8:41, and nobody else wants a copy of my book. You should all go into a hedge and pick the berries and regret not buying another copy. Right, okay then, I'll be back. We love Roger. Roger's my baby.
I have a busy day on Tuesdays. It's like being at school because I do philosophy in the morning and this in the afternoon. So, and I do, those are the only two subjects I study apart from, doing craft and stuff. So it kind of all comes on one day. It's
right. Well, it's nice to stay busy.
well, yes, it's better than being bored.
What aspect of philosophy are you working on?
What were we doing today? We were doing Nietzsche today.
Nietzsche, okay.
And it led to quite a good, because it's largely the course is about having a subject introduced and then discussing it, and so it becomes a discussion group one. So that's how it works. So this Nietzsche needed a lot of explanation in the beginning, and then it led to. I found the discussion on this one less satisfactory than some others because Nietzsche himself was an atheist, and yet in order to explain it, an awful lot of the group were bringing religion in as though that was the only way to explain it, and I felt that a little bit unsatisfactory. It isn't usually like that, but it's usually a very good discussion. It was a good discussion, but I felt that aspect of it where it couldn't be explained without religion was very difficult.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you've got to have a balance and a counterbalance. René Lecat, je pense que je le suis. I think I am, therefore I think, therefore I am.
That's right, yeah.
Right, okay. And again, you've got to say to yourself, okay, mankind has evolved primarily because of an interest in the creation of themselves,
yes,
and of the creation by a God. So
yes.
regardless, you cannot dispense.
Well, the point is they have, I think, the way I look at it though is everybody's looking for that, why am I here and what happens after death, the two big questions.
Yes.
But they can only be answered, it would seem, by there's so many, 4,000 religions in the world. It can only be explained by this almost myth and magic, rather than looking at only what we know, like with our senses, not imagined. I feel that the explanation needs to be able to come there somewhere. I don't know. It's very difficult. But religions have to try. I feel religions are almost invented in order to be able to explain, because they're very big questions that need asking.
Well, religions are manipulated by people for their own advantage, for power. And
yes, there is that as well. Yes.
Okay. So if you go to Buddha and you consider the 7 levels of heaven and Buddha
but Buddha doesn't believe in God, does he? Buddha isn't God led.
He believes in an evolution
Buddhism is not a religion.
An evolution through development. And if you think your journey in life from the day you were born to the day you die, you incur experiences along the road.
Yes.
It's a journey. Life is a journey.
Yes, absolutely.
No matter how long or short it is, it's a journey. Once you become aware as an individual, my first memory goes back when I was 2 years of age. I've got very clear memories of when I was 2 years of age.
Sorry, I missed that bit.
I can log myself through my journey, and it's about experiences. So in your experiences, you may ask yourself, and I certainly did, primarily perhaps at age 13, why am I here? What's my goal in life? Where am I going to go? And what's going to happen at the end? Well, I'm not really concerned about what's going to happen at the end. I had a cosmic conscience when I was 13, and I felt that, and I can remember a discussion with one of my schoolmates in grammar school. And it was, do you believe in God? And I said, yes. And he said, well, what happens when you die? Well, I said, first of all, the body's made up of chemicals. They dissipate. The atmosphere of the earth is transient. It doesn't stay in one place. And in fact, there's nothing to say that the soul isn't a cluster of atoms that goes to the outer cosmic reaches of the universe, in which case you can be in multiple places over a period of time. And time, again, is only quantified because Einstein came up with a theory of relativity. So again, that's a different element. I see the possibility of multiple universes, and I see time as a million lines are traveling at the same time, or 10 million lines, or a trillion million, or 100 trillion million of lines of life are traveling at the same time. And if you could step out of one line into another line, you'd be in a different life, in a different time spot, but you're still on the same journey.
Yeah. Yes, I can see that a sort of argument.
What it's for.
It's in the sense that it's that almost the Earth is constantly changing, and when something dies, the particles are taken up and become something else.
Yes,
it's constantly renewing, isn't it? The whole, or changing and renewing some parts and not others. So that constant change, yet being the same, I can see that, but I don't need any supernatural to believe that. It's something you can almost see happening if you watch decay and regrowth and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so, supernatural is about what we see. We've got certain senses to pick up certain things, and that's our limitation with the senses we have. So we're here perhaps just to do it, and it's an interesting thing with the mind. Whereas with the computers, you can add and delete information, but the mind is set.
Exactly.
And you think, well, is there a reason for that? Well, yes. And talking about life after death, there's some remarkable things around, things that have happened to me in the family, and with other instances of experiences, without explaining why or what. And I'm following Christ, but they say that what actually happens is not what's said, because the religion is concerned with being good and kind, if you like, here. But where it's heading and why we're here is strange. But the point is that I'd say we don't need to know why we're here. We have to make everything of what we have around us to, like the journey, explore, take it all in, and say, well, just absorb without knowing why, because we're limited with senses. So what else might there be? For instance, there are radio waves, television waves.
Well, I suppose there'd be all sorts of things we can't imagine. We don't know yet. I mean, science is taking us into strange places.
And we don't know what electricity is. We can't science is good at knocking up theories, and well, that looks like it, that could be it, then that might change anyway. You know, a lot of things we don't see which are there. As I said, radio waves, things like this, for instance.
Roger, I've got to get started.
What?
Roger, I've got to get started. I wanted to say one thing. On all that, right? Nobody has ever explained to me the real, understandable way that I'm able to speak to you now, and you're able to hear me and see me exactly at the same time as I'm talking, right? Nobody's ever been able to sit. Nobody's ever been able to sit down and say how this works, right?
But somebody would be able to tell you that's very clever.
I would have thought someone could explain it, because somebody invented what's happened. Somebody must know how to explain that.
Yeah, but one person amongst 7 billion people and 4 troglodytes and Roger, it's a lot to ask, right? Right. Guys,
well, I like television. I don't know how it works, but I like
well, Roger, shut up.
But somebody does.
I got a lot to crack on with, right? I got a lot to crack on with. Oh, somebody's just left.
What?
Andy.
Oh, no. How does this work now? I'll be in full flow and I won't have one of my Douglases. Right, guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to let 2 of you. Oh, this is going to go completely wrong, right? Will might know how to do this, right? So what I'll do, I'll make Will co-danker, right? And if he sees Andy wanting to come in to admit him, he lets Andy on. Right, job done. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give you a passing homage, right? Homage à toi. Am I full screen at the minute?
Yes.
No.
You are for me.
Oh,
No, there's a quarter screen.
Do you know what? Right? Did you just hear what Drina said? I'm going to ask again, Drina. Am I full screen?
You are for me.
Well,
That's it. That's
you are.
Always.
what a bloody creep. Right, I'll get it.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Right, what it is, right? Yes. So here we go. So I want to read this out, right? And you're going to put it together yourselves, right? So you ask the question. The surviving contemporary writers who wrote about Caligula, right? Now, Caligula was assassinated in 41 AD 41, right? He became emperor in AD 37, right? Now, let's just go through this and you'll understand why I'm doing this, right? Philo of Alexandria wrote in brief about the Alexandrian crisis in AD 38, which was 1 year into Caligula's reign, right? And an escalating situation which was going on in Alexandria and in Judea in the imperial reign of Caligula, right? It doesn't say anything about the fact that Caligula's a nut job. So that's the first thing, right? Another Roman writer, here we go. Seneca the Younger is a contemporary who died in AD 65. So he would have been very contemporary with Caligula. He may have actually met Caligula, right? Most of his surviving works haven't survived, right? But is Seneca saying anything derogatory about Caligula? Right.
Yeah.
So basically what we've got lots of little bits and pieces. Seneca goes on and he basically writes a work known as De Constantia Sapiensis, which basically means on the firmness of the wise person. Includes Caligula material, right? Where there's words of insults and tyranny being made against Caligula, right? Didn't like the guy, so he's not going to write good things about him, right? But he's writing stoically about Caligula, making a portrait about Caligula, right? It's not exactly a set history, right? So that's basically Seneca the Younger, right? Seneca the Younger, 4 BC to AD 65, right? So he would have been, he would have been coming up to his mid 40s when he knew the end of Caligula's sort of reign. So here's a few other things. This makes interesting reading, right? Contemporary or near contemporary writers. Remember, contemporary means at the time. Near contemporary writers, really clear, right? So there's a writer known as Marcus Cluvius Rufus, right, who's a senator, right? His works about Caligula are strangely lost, but he did write about Caligula, apparently. There's another Roman writer known as Civilis Nonianus, right? He's an orator, a historian. His works involving Caligula are lost. Fabius Rusticus, who's a historian. His writings about Caligula, what's that? They're lost. Agrippina the Younger, Caligula's sister, who wrote memoirs about her brother. Guess what happened to them? They were lost. Here's another one, another famous Roman historian, Aufidius Bassus. That's great, isn't it? Aufidius Bassus, right? Historian, right? All the parts that mention Caligula, guess what? They're lost. So that's 5 contemporary historians, other than Seneca, right, who would have known Caligula. All their mentions of Caligula are lost.
But how do we know they existed if they're lost?
Oh, we know the historians. We know that Marcus, we know Agrippina the Younger existed. That was Caligula's sister.
But how do we know?
Basically, Marcus is writing about the Julio-Claudian leaders, right? And the passage where he's meant to have written about Caligula goes from Tiberius straight to Claudius. There's nothing. The pages are gone. They don't exist, right?
Because it was like the Egyptians knocking out, what was it, Tutankhamun, what was his name? Akhenaten, is it?
Oh, right, Akhenaten. Akhenaten. So
They
that goes back to
destroyed,
3,500.
away the images, all the rest of it, because of his one religion. It was the sun god.
And Hatshepsut, yeah, exactly. Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh, because she dared to be a woman and a pharaoh. Yeah, we've got statues associated with her that are blocked. There's big brick things around her, right? So anyway, right, now listen to this, right? We talked about these contemporaries with Caligula, right? Now listen to this. The one who wrote out of two, Suetonius Paulinus, who actually wrote about Caligula's invasion in brackets of Britain, wrote 80 years later in AD 120. So we believe everything that Suetonius Paulinus writes about Caligula. He writes the life of Gaius, the life of Caligula. Caligula's actual name that we would call him. Hey, Gaius, how you doing, babe? You wouldn't call him Caligula, right? So the life, the vitae of Gaius, right? Caligula. What he says, Caligula marched troops to the ocean, blah, 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 Channel Coast, drew them up in formation, so on, ordered the collection of seashells as spoils of the ocean, and returned to Rome claiming victory, right? Now, he's writing that 80 years later, right? It's to ridicule ridicule Caligula. Suetonius explicitly mocks Caligula. Nobody else. He mocks Caligula. He could mock Claudius, who's got a stutter, a withered arm, who's a blithering wreck, but he does not criticize in the same way Claudius, right? Now, this is 80 years later. Cassius Dio, I call him Dio Cassius, but Cassius Dio, writing in AD 220, or maybe AD 230. What's that? It's nearly 180 years later. Yeah, right. In his Roman history book, 59, right? What he says, Caligula assembled troops on the Channel, built a lighthouse. Oh, my God, Caligula built a lighthouse. He did something useful. Oh, my God. Flippin' heck. He ordered soldiers to gather shells, but there's no crossing recorded, right? But this is probably written on the back of Suetonius Paulinus, who's writing 100 years before Cassius Dio. So if we expunge those two from the records, right? Mind you, if we expunge Julius Caesar's works from the records, we know that something happened at Ebbsfleet. What happened, we don't know, right? Anyway, listen to this. This makes interesting reading, right? Josephus, who's a very famous Roman writer, no jokes, writing between AD 75 and AD 95. He writes the works of the Jewish War and Antiquities, right? There's no mention, there's nothing at all about Britain involving Caligula. Josephus discusses Caligula exclusively and extensively, especially tyranny and cult issues. But Josephus does not mention any invasion at all. Josephus does not mention Caligula anything at all, right? He doesn't mention Caligula having any link, no shells, no nothing. This is Josephus. But he writes about Caligula's life, right? And he's writing, so he's writing maybe 75, 95 AD, right? Somewhere around there, 60 years later. But he's not criticizing Caligula in the same way those other two writers are talking. Now, what we've got next, we've gone from we're looking at we've done Seneca the Younger, right? Now, Seneca the Younger, although he's talking in a derogatory way about the likes of Caligula, right? But Seneca the Younger mentions Caligula's cruelty, insanity, and humiliation of the rich. But guess what? There is no mention of Britain or an invasion. He does not mention Caligula in any word linked with Britain. Now, this is Seneca. This is a guy who wants to really slag off Caligula, who's probably knew Caligula, right? But he didn't actually write anything about Caligula and Britain, right? So Seneca was alive in Rome, politically active and silent on Britain. Now, have we mentioned Philo of Alexandria? Right? Now, we did mention Philo of Alexandria earlier on. Now, this is an interesting figure, right? Philo of Alexandria is writing about Caligula in, you could say, in a derogatory way, right? He writes a detailed contemporary account of Caligula's reign, focuses on imperial cult crisis. There is no mention of Britain. So the historians who had an eyewitness bent on Caligula could have written about Caligula invading Britain and making an arse of himself, and they didn't. So the only two people who actually wrote at all about Caligula invading Britain was Suetonius and Cassius Dio, writing long after the event, using hostile senatorial traditions, presenting the episode as ridiculous, not military, and the damnatio of the Roman state is coming into play. There is no contemporary historian who describes a landing, a battle, British resistance, or a return of tribute or captives. So in other words, hang on a minute, Karl, hang on a minute. Right, Karl, put this one. So 1 minute you're saying that the contemporary writers are saying that there's no link between Caligula and Britain, right? The ones that are writing years later are saying that there's a link between Caligula and Britain, but somehow Karl's going to try and convince us that there was some invasion. Ground used by historians to attack the idea of an invasion. These are the standard scholarly objections, not opinions, but methodological points. Total absence of contemporary testimony from Philo, Seneca, who hated Caligula, Josephus, any military dispatch. For Roman warfare, that is abnormal. So in other words, they're not really talking about anything to do with Caligula involving any military stuff at all, which sounds odd because, you know, all Roman emperors have got some military stuff if they're worth their salt, right? Including a blithering idiot like Claudius. But there's nothing mentioned associated with Caligula, except that we've got Caligula's legionary base, we've got Caligula's lighthouse, we've got Caligula's this, we've got Caligula's that. But only one of the writers mentions the lighthouse. No British or Gallic reaction recorded. No British kings mentioned. No reprisals. No triumph voted by Senate. No coinage celebrating Britain. That's one thing that Will was looking at. You contrast this with Caesar and Claudius, both of them celebrating the invasion of Britain on coinage, which is undoubted, right? Mocking tone of the only accounts. Suetonius and Dio use ridicule, emphasize farce, present shells as parody. Historians argue you don't hide a real conquest inside a joke, right? But this isn't going well for me, but it will in a short while. No archaeological signature, no Caligulan forts in Kent.
So where did we originally get the idea that he did anything?
We got the idea from these two writers who are writing respectively 80 and 180 years later. There's no contemporary writers at all.
Yeah, and they said he had landed.
Pliny the Elder, AD 2 to AD 79. Again, one of the items I provided. I think I saw a reference, and I'll have to go back to look for it. Caligula had thought about re-establishing Rome in Alexandria, and he wanted to change his capital. That was one thing. The second thing, he was an outcast, of course, up until the time Tiberius died within a few years, and then he got brought into the fold. So he was, for a young man, he was exiled like the rest of his family because Tiberius wasn't very happy.
Tiberius murdered his dad, Germanicus.
Yeah. Caligula also is a reference to the boot, which suspects that Caligula had a deformity of his foot, but he didn't like the name Caligula. His name doesn't appear on many coins because, in fact, they refer to Gaius. They don't refer to Caligula because he didn't like it, and he would have retribution against people he didn't like. He also stole money from many rich landowners and sometimes killed them off in order to get their property to fill his treasury. So there's a range there. I'll have a look to see if I can find any other references.
Keep going with that. Now we're gonna move on quite promptly, right? So narrative convenience. Later writers wanted a mad tyrant. They got Caligula. And again, we're using Caligula in the right context, not as Will's right. He wanted to be called Gaius, a failed would-be conqueror. A contrast with Claudius' successful invasion. Claudius's invasion was so successful, it was like a walk in the park. Now that just doesn't happen. Caligula becomes the fool, the foil. Where this leaves my argument, right? The attack on the invasion rests on silence, hostile literary framing, lack of material evidence, but, and this is where we're onto something, absence of evidence, evidence of absence. There's something missing in the record. We've got 6 writers whose work to do with Caligula are erased, the damnatio. A limited symbolic or diplomatic crossing occurred. That's what I might feel at this stage. Or a demonstration of force was misrepresented later. The troops may have landed on the shore and come back, collecting shells. That sounds plausible. That's not a defeat. Or Caligula intended invasion, but was politically undermined, right? So this is my bit. The strongest possible pro-invasion case at this minute, right? Before we look at anything more, and I've got to be very wary of time tonight. Caligula's Britain episode can be read as a real operation, even though it's partial, that later hostile writers compressed into satire. Best supporting pillars. 1, a real Britain submitted to Caligula in Gaul. Aminius, son of Conobalinus, fled from Britain and went to the boots, literally, of Caligula, right? And Aminius basically said to Caligula, right, you know, I'm supposed to be a Roman leader in Britain. With your support, why aren't you supporting me, right? Now, Suetonius says Caligula treated it as if the whole island had submitted, right? What does that mean? Suetonius. Caligula treated it as if the whole island had submitted. Submitted to what? Apparently they collected shells, according to him, on the North French coast. A very large concentration of troops on the Channel coast is implied in Dio's narrative. Cassius Dio is saying that, hang on a minute, Caligula's built, there's a large army on the northern France coastline, right? A major gathering makes more sense if something big was intended. The shell's detail may be misread, mistranslated. In other words, Suetonius' work was copied by Dio Cassius. So in other words, there's only one historian who's really writing sort of secondary, right? There is a secondary scholarly literature arguing the episode could reflect a misunderstood technical term ritualized spoils or a staged demonstration rather than a literal madness. We've got to take something back with us. There's no 1 year. We've got to take something back with us, right? So there's a writer known as Steelman who says Caligula initiated real invasion preparations and produced at least one Britain-facing political submission, and the rest was later rewritten as farce. So when we think about all of this, this isn't my core idea, but you can go with this. Claudius' invasion is one of the defining legitimate acts of his reign. This, you know, he produced wonderful works, right? But this was going to be his epitaph. So later tradition has incentivized it as a prelude to Claudius, right? Claudius' annexation looks more grand strategically, right, in AD 43. If it's framed as the completion of unfinished business, and modern work argues invasion logistics likely required years of preparation, not something improvised in AD 43. Now take that 1 point, folks. Take that one real point. Okay. I'll give you some. I'll give you some dates now. Let's give you some dates. I got a very expensive book here, right?
Yeah.
That Michelle has told. It's worth 250 quid. So if I die, this pays for my funeral, right? So anyway, so basically think about these facts and figures, right? On the 24th of January, AD 41, right? He's assassinated, right? On the 25th of January, AD 41, Claudius comes to the throne, right? And the next year, no invasion. I mean, AD 43, in the summer of AD 43, there's a full-blown invasion, right? So, in other words, this massive invasion with a buildup of troops, military, supplies, ships, intelligence, everything that the Claudius needed, right, was there ready and waiting, right? This is key. The detail is in the mix. There's something predestined. For example, if you want to compare this to the D-Day landings, right? The D-Day landings took probably 2.5 years to build up all that material to invade in Normandy, right? It didn't happen on a Wednesday afternoon, right? Claudius didn't turn up and say, right, we're going to invade Britain. This is a lot of build-up, right? If Caligula had already assembled forces and focused attention on Britain, it becomes very easy for later authors to cast it as Caligula's chaotic, ridiculous prelude. Caligula's here we go. So that's Caligula, chaotic, ridiculous prelude. Claudius, competent finisher who achieves what the madman could not. Adminius, he's this British leader who goes to a lunatic. Caligula's a lunatic, isn't he? He's a madman, right? So Adminius says to Caligula, right, help me. And Caligula says, I will help you. So Adminius is this sort of usurper, pro-Roman sort of leader in Britain of the tribes, right? Gives a perfect bridge event. Britain becomes a live issue before AD 43. I kid you not. Tensions rise and Claudius later move feels necessary. So the Caligula fast tradition can serve two masters at once. Anti-Caligula moralizing and pro-Claudius legitimate causes to invade. So the main grounds used to attack an actual invasion, right? I didn't know I was going to be this long doing this, but we'll go on to images in 2 minutes, right? So five, right? So five sort of there wasn't an invasion. One, only later hostile writers tell the story and they tell it as a ridicule, right? No contemporary people write about Caligula and Britain, right? But no other contemporary writers write about Adminius. That's odd. Adminius is a British leader who's asked Caligula to help him. He's not mentioned. Two, near contemporary silence. No solid contemporary campaign narrative survives, except he's building all this stuff in northern France, which doesn't add up to the historical writing, hence history earlier on. Three, no unambiguous archaeological AD 40 invasion horizon, right? Now, we don't have much at Ebbsfleet. That's the only evidence that we got for Claudius's, not Claudius's, Julius Caesar's invasions, 55, 54. Four, no clear Roman style outcome markers. No captives, no battle reports, no settlement terms in surviving accounts. But what about Adminius? What's happening to him? The Shells episode reads like satire, unless reinterpreted, hence the debate. Folks, let's go on to some images. Let's try and start to kill this baby, right? What I'm not going to do, I'm not trying to force this thing down your throats. What I'm trying to do is offer you another alternative to history, because lots of our history is wrong in Britain, and Roger knows full well, right? I will tell you a little point now once I get my images, right? When I look, for example, right? Oh God, I got so much here, right? when I look, for example, at Welsh history, everybody makes the leaders of Wales seen in a derogatory way. They always refer to the kings of Wales as princes, right? But it's a mistranslation. Principus, which means leader, right? It doesn't mean the prince of an English king over the border, right? The English say, for example, history writes that the last Prince of Wales died at Kilmary on the 11th of December in 1282. But his brother became the king for less than a year and was murdered at Shrewsbury and hung, drawn, and quartered on the 3rd of October 1283. He was the last king of Wales, but nobody tells you anything about it at all. So if we're looking at modern bits of history being distorted for another purpose, we see that. This coin, I'm going to probably go through these a bit quicker than I wanted to, but down there in the corner, alongside the sea, that you can see the outline of another sea, right? You can just see it, right? Now, that's really interesting because that's a coin that's had the C removed, right? So that would be associated with Caius, Caligula, Caesar, Augustus, Germanicus, right? But the C's removed, right? So the C in before Caesar, right? Caligula, Caius, of the 45 to 60 coins that this guy has seen, 80% are exactly like this. They've had the C removed. Now, these are not coins that have been all found in Britain. This is a guy who studied Caligula coins. Yeah. So the other, have I got 3 images of the same thing? Yes, I am. Sorry. Right. So there's another thing, right? The one thing about Caligula coins is he's very celebratory of his family, right? So what Caligula does, right? On the reverse of the coin, right? He shows another figure in his family, right? On this coin itself, you can clearly see where somebody has tried to deface one of Caligula's coins. It's a gold coin. Yeah. Now this is interesting, right? Again, you can clearly see where the C has been removed. They've deliberately taken this C off the coins. So in other words, this coin no longer becomes a coin of Caligula, it becomes a coin of the Roman state, right? Now, sesterces, right? The reason why I wanted you to have my book is all of this stuff is referred to in the book, right? So when I'm talking about coins, there's a passage in my book, which I'm not going to expect you to have in front of you today. But if you've got my book in front of you next week, I could basically say, right, if you turn to this page where I've got later Roman coins at page 60, right, it explains what the values of these coins are. But again, that's a really nice coin, right? And there, what is he doing there, right? That's going to be Caligula, right, on the reverse of the coin, right? This is Caligula, right? He's looking quite interesting, but Germanicus is associated with his dad. Now, folks, this is where it gets really interesting, right? Now, I mentioned Kent next week, but not this week, because not a single one of the coins that I mentioned this week has been found in Kent. The coins next week have been found in Kent, right? None of the metal detecting coins that are recorded in the Portable Antiquities Survey, right, evidence that I've got today, right, are being recorded in Kent. Doesn't mean to say they haven't been, right? But what we've got is coins being recorded from the Caligula period in some of these counties, right? Hampshire in particularly, right? And we've got Northamptonshire there as well, which is really odd. So what does this damnatio memoriae mean? Right, it basically means condemnation of memory. So in other words, Caligula's memory was to be erased, even from coins. He was to be erased from history entirely, from historical documents, from to be seen to have done anything useful. Is a Roman practice of erasing a disgraced person, usually a high-ranking official or emperor, from public life, history, and memory. It involves destroying statues, removing names from inscriptions, and banning portraits to condemn them to oblivion. A prominent example is Caracalla's removal of his brother Geta from official records. So Geta was assassinated by Caracalla within basically months of their father Septimus Severus dying, right? And Septimus Severus wanted Caracalla after 212 to reign together, and Caracalla didn't want this, and he decided to kill his brother Geta. So he removed his name from the memory of the Roman state. Damnatio memoriae is a modern Latin phrase, condemnation, damnation of memory, right? Damn you. So there are and have been many routes to damnatio memoriae, including the destruction of depictions, the removal of names from inscriptions, documents, and even large-scale rewritings of history. Now, you could say that that happened to the Nazis at the end of the Second World War. The swastikas were destroyed and all the rest of it. But that's different. That's not the same as this, right? The Nazis were being destroyed by other nations, right? Damnatio memoriae is done by the Roman state against a Roman statesperson, right? This very different, right? So, for example, there's that is basically that was created in AD 199, right? It basically had the Severan family. There's Septimus Severus. Yes, he was from Africa. He was black. And there's Septimus Severus, that lad there. Evil-looking bastard, and Julia Domna, right, who is his mother, right? Can you see that the head of Geta, right, is erased? It was on the orders of Caracalla that his brother had the damnatio, right? He was to be erased from history. So here we go, Portugal Antiquity Scheme. Let's look at some of the coins. Now I'm going to make this statement, right? The statement is evidence of coins worn indicate that they had come over in the reign of the emperor Caligula. That's very important. If they're worn, they wouldn't have come over after, right? That's the point. Now this is an interesting coin, like they all are. If they're mint condition coins, they've been buried almost at the time that they come over, at the time of the reign of Caligula. How did they come over? How are they so widespread in southern England, right? If they were basically taken out of circulation, and by the time the Romans were coming over in AD 43, you wouldn't be seen dead with a Caligula coin, right? It was an offense to have a coin of Caligula, right? I don't know how bad it was, but you didn't want them, right? So this coin itself, we won't talk a great deal about the detail, but it's this coin itself rather interesting. It's a copper coin. It's the sesterces, and we'll talk about all the coin values in a short while. Look at that. That's not exactly in bad condition, right? It's in a fairly good condition, but there's a hole in it, right? Now, why is there a hole drilled through this coin? When I say drilled through this coin, somebody has probably used this as an ornament, right? Why? That's the question. But what is also interesting in this is it's actually found in Northamptonshire, which is basically in the beating heart of Britain. What's it doing there? Why is it there? Right. This is this is a very interesting coin. This is this is being found in Suffolk. Right. So we go a bit further, sort of north of London. We go to Suffolk. You know, northeast. We go to Suffolk. Really interesting there. It's a silver coin, right? And rather interesting silver coin, right? it's got this really interesting representation. This isn't a bad condition coin. This hasn't had much circulation on it, right? So basically, you've got the head of Caligula, right, and you've got the head of Augustus. So on the obverse, which is the front of the coin, you've got, I am Caligula, but on the back of the coin, he's representing Augustus, right, who was the emperor that reigned before Caligula. Now, does that sound like the ideas of a madman, right? When he's portraying family members on coins, I'm not telling you where these are produced, but this is a West Sussex coin, right? This is on the south coast. This is West Sussex. Another Sesterces coin, copper alloy coin, not like the previous silver one, right? Very interesting because this is very interesting because it's worn like buggery, right? This is extremely worn. Why is it worn? But this is really, really worn down coin, right? Why is this worn? How could it have remained in circulation? You wouldn't be seen dead with this coin. But again, this is out there. It's out there for a reason. Maybe this had been really well circulated before. So obviously it's circulated in AD 37. So by the time it gets to Britain in AD 41, it's well worn. It's well worn. Hampshire. So on the south coast again, a bit further over towards the west, getting the idea. This is a Dupontus, right? SC, what does that word SC mean? But it's got Germanicus on it. This is a coin from Germanicus. This is a senatorial coin, right? Very interesting senatorial coin. And naturally, this is associated with honoring Nero and Drusus, sons of Germanicus, right? In the reign of Caligula, right? So hang on a minute, right? So Nero would eventually become emperor, right? And Drusus, right? These are actually mentioned on this coin. So why is that? This is mad, right? Now, the word SC, very interesting there. SC on Roman coins stands for Senatus Consulto, which means by the decree of the Senate, right? So in the reign of the likes of Caligula, that was a senatorial coin issued, right? And this was a bronze. These can be bronze or brass coins, authorized by the Senate, distinguishing it from the emperor-controlled gold and silver, right? These coins were issued in the reign of our friend, right? So Caligula. Now, this is my book, as you know, guys, right? The reason why, right, we go and look at my book, and look at there. That's the book that I've got here, the very expensive book behind it, right? Now, in my own book, it's basically got the values of coins themselves, and it means that you could you could work out what a value of a coin is. So what we've mentioned Dupontuses, we mentioned sesterces, we mentioned denariuses. We get an idea of the value of these coins, right? Earlier on from another collection, we had a gold coin, but that's obviously not been found in the portable antiquities service, right? Now, there we go. Caligula. Now, this is from the book. So Caligula, a nickname meaning little boat, was given him in childhood by his father's soldiers because he went into battle with his dad. Now, I've gone all quiet because I spotted something in the week. I thought, hang on a minute, right? You can't deny that statement, right? He was given that name by his dad's soldiers. Germanicus was going to become Roman emperor, right? And Caligula was always bitter that his dad was assassinated. He was a general. His dad was a general, right? Caligula knew of military strategies. Do you see where I'm going here, right? If you look at Caligula, right, you don't hear about Caligula's military victories, but he may have actually been a military genius because his dad was a military genius. Think about it, right? So on here, Caligula is great nephew of Tiberius, great grandson of Augustus. So he's got imperialness in his blood. He's of the blood, right? Caesonia, Germanicus Caesar. Germanicus Caesar, he's got the title Caesar in the reign of Augustus. It's very likely that Tiberius had Germanicus murdered, right? Because he felt threatened, right? And Caligula had to live with Tiberius as this bloody emperor when Germanicus could have been the emperor, right? So his mother, Agrippina Senior, Agrippinas do come up a bit. His brothers were Nero and Drusus, right? Now, excuse me a little bit, guys, but he had these brothers, right? And he celebrated these brothers on coins. And sorry, I made a mistake earlier on. It wasn't Nero who was going to become emperor. Sorry, I made that mistake. This was another Nero. So Nero and Drusus are remembered on Caligula's coins, right? So there we go. Agrippina Junior, she will come back up in history again. Okay. Julia Livilla, she will come up as well. But back to this little chart, right? Back to this little chart again. So we've got coins in Hampshire, we've got coins in West Sussex. Okay, we've got a few. We got coins a little bit further off the map there in Suffolk, right? We've got coins in Northampton. Let's move on, right? So, there we go. He likes to be known as Gaius on his coins. You're very right. So this coin's from Norfolk. What's it doing in Norfolk? Exactly, right? And this dates from AD 40. This was produced in AD 40. Now, if you go and look at some historians, right? Some historians argue that the reason why you get one or two coins in Britain from Caligula is he paid his troops here, right? That is a denarius from AD 40, right? It says it's worn, right? But as coins go, it's not massively worn. And again, this is not found on the south coast. It's somehow got up north, right? It's somehow northeast into Norfolk, right? Another one. Look at this one. It's rather interesting. Another coin of Caligula. This dates from AD 40 again. This is found in bloody Yorkshire, right? This is found in Judith territory, right? And it basically says there. It says, look at this coin. It's another very interesting coin. It's a silver denarius, the types of coins that were actually paid to Roman soldiers, right? It somehow ended up in Yorkshire, right? This is also dated from AD 40. Odd. Right. So this is a copper alloy, right? It could be any. It could be a follis. It could be sort of a lower grade coin as a copper coin, right? Struck by Caligula. This is commemorating Agrippina, so it's again another commemorative coin issued by, and this is found here. This is found in Nottinghamshire. There we go. We're up in Robin Hood territory. That's not even on the map. Look at this. It's worn. It's totally worn. This coin is worn. What the hell is it doing in Britain, right? It shouldn't even be here, right? Guys, Norfolk, a second coin found in Norfolk, right? Very, very interesting. It's a denarius again. Another denarius. This dates from AD 40. It's our third denarius, right? And look at that. Is that a coin that's been paid to a Roman soldier? How has it got here? Why is it here, right? And again, it's unlikely this is going to be Roman trader coins, because Roman trader coins are not going to be using these types of coins, right? Anyway, this we're not really sure about this coin, but it's ended up in Nottinghamshire. It could be from Caligula, right? But it's extremely worn. It's got SC on it, which is really similar to that SC, right? So it's probably a Caligula coin found in Nottingham. So Wiltshire. But we're on to bloody Wiltshire now, right? So this is quite an early coin of denarius. Denarius is quite an early coin of Caligula, right? But again, it's a denarius. It's sort of celebrating Germanicus, his dad, right? He absolutely loved his dad. He adored his dad. I couldn't get this, but so you've got this really nice silver coin again, a denarius, right? So again, you go off the map to Wiltshire, right? And This is a Hampshire coin, right? And this is extremely worn. This is a worn down coin. This is a really low value coin, probably something you could brought a loaf of bread with. But it's so worn down, we've hardly got any detail, but we know it's a coin of Caligula, right? So this is a rather interesting coin. What is this doing here? Now, this is found in Buckinghamshire, right? This coin itself is a coin that was minted in Greece, right? It was minted quite some miles away, right? So it's minted in Greece. It's minted all the way back there. It's ended up in Britain, right? How has it got here? This is again, you know, he loves his family. Does this sound like a madman, right? He loves his family. He really does love his family because he's seeing these people on his coins, right? This is another coin found in Norfolk. This is a denarius found in Norfolk. Another denarius found in Norfolk, right? Why are all these coins being found in Norfolk? They are being found in Norfolk. This is another one in Norfolk, a denarius, right? So again, looking at this one, right? This is found in Shropshire. Okay, if we can't go any further north than this, I don't know where we're going, but anyway, so this is fairly well worn, right? This is a denarius. It's a silver denarius, really bad, you know, it's worn. But again, this is a coin of Caligula, the types of coins that he's paying his troops. Another coin from Hampshire, right? This is really badly worn, and there it is, temple scene there. Very worn down on the front here. It might be an SC on that one. I don't know, right? But again, we're nearly at the end. We've got another coin from Shropshire. Look at that. Another coin from Shropshire. And it's coming up as Lungdon Mint again. This is a denarius, right? This is again ended up here. How? And I know you've got another coin here, which is a copper alloy coin, and this is found in Cambridgeshire. So all of this is showing you something really interesting. And oh, by the way, I thought I'd mention this is if anyone's interested in coins, Roman coins and stuff. I thought I'd chuck this guy on there. I've been working with him for some time, Michael Trenery. You know, he's there to sort of identify any stuff that I've got, and he's still selling coins on the internet, right? So where are we now? It's 9:47, right? I'm basically thinking, right, you've all been Caligula out for now, right? So what we're going to do, right? We've done quite a lot today. What we're going to do is we're going to go to this, where we started, right? What I've done tonight is just basically give you some archaeological evidence. Next week, we're going to go into more archaeological evidence, right? More about what I think, right? And hopefully we'll be able to come up with some idea about Caligula, right? But somehow what we've got to do, we've got to link in the gap between Caligula and Claudius. And if I give you a little bit more detail, which didn't copy out, right? Here's some detail, right? Caligula was assassinated on the 24th of January, AD 41, at the Palatine Games in Rome. He was assassinated at the actual games, right? He was assassinated by a single tribune of the guard at the age of 28. He reigned as Roman emperor for 3 years, 10 months, and 8 days. His predecessor Tiberius was 22 years, Augustus was 40 years, and Claudius was 13 years, and Nero was 13 years himself. Now, thinking about all of this, thinking about how we understand this, there's something really odd about the story of Caligula. At the end of this story, I'm hopefully going to have all of you guys saying, didn't believe any of it, Carl, that was a complete waste of time. But I want you to basically say, right, I'm glad I've got another idea of history, right? I'm glad I've got another sense of history, right? And if that's if that's what I've managed to achieve, that's good. So we're trying to do it by archaeological evidence. That's where we're going to go next week. And next week, I did actually write down that I'm going to try and do all of this by not looking at the written history, and hopefully it'll make a lot more sense. And I'm looking forward to getting to London and seeing the archaeological evidence in London. And I've just realised that nobody can see me. So I'm looking forward to looking at the archaeological evidence in London and all these other places, and actually looking at the tablets that they found and bits of wharf and sort of how they've narrowed the River Thames and all the coins and stuff. And then Julius and then Boudica burns it all down to the ground, and you've got skulls and stuff, and you don't get that in written history. You only get that in archaeology. And I always used to say this: I've never really had the balls. Mind my French. I've never really had the balls to stick to this. Right? If I could write a book that just had archaeology and no historical stuff in it at all, right, that would be a very brave thing to do. But I won't be doing it next week. On that note, Anne, how did you feel that went?
I really enjoyed it.
Good.
And I must say, I've never been that interested in coins, but they were more interesting because somehow the story was coming out about them in a better way. I don't know. Anyway, I enjoyed it. That's all I can say.
Good. And the point that Will was making about celebratory coins, in you know, as if we got one with a trireme on it, there is something with a trireme on there. Why is it on the coin? Keep looking, Will. But I'm gonna make this really brash statement, right? And I don't know if I can articulate this properly. Out of the average dies for a coin, you know, the stamp for the coins, you can probably get 10,000 coins out of it, right? Before the dies have to be discarded and melted and be made into another die, right? So when we look at that in Welsh history, right, surviving, there's only one single coin related to a Welsh king surviving, and that's a single coin of King Hywel, right, who died in 950, right? One single coin. Now we could think that 10,000 coins of Hywel were made, but only one has survived, right? Now nobody went out deliberately after to melt down all of Hywel's coins, right? Because he was a celebrated guy. His laws were still used in 1536 until Wales was abolished, right? So we could think that if coins were issued which celebrated a military victory, those would be the first coins that would be melted down. And it's likely that they managed to get to them, but not all of them. You've heard it yourself, guys. You've heard it yourself. Michelle used to work in the Royal Mint, and they used to issue coins in the Royal Mint that they used to think, we're going to melt these down, but still several would get out, right? That's modern security methods. So that there must be some stuff out there, but we're going to look at the archaeological evidence, because whenever you go online, right, if you look on the internet, right, which you say, have any Caligula coins been found in Kent? And it says, yeah, loads of them have been found. And I'm thinking, right, I really need to find out where these coins have been found. But none of them have been reported by metal detecting enthusiasts as part of the portable antiquities scheme. However, I think that they've been recorded separately, so I need to look there, right? But there's one thing that might be coming up, right? That if there was a minor invasion, it may not have been in Kent at all. It may have been in Hampshire, right? Or it may have been in West Sussex. And so these are the things that I've got to work out, right? And I've got to, I've got to get there next week.
That was interesting though, because you're pursuing just one king's or emperor's coin through a number, any way you could find them. And I found that a sort of discovery thing, which was sort of different in a way than when you're looking at various coins.
Yes.
Yes, I enjoyed that.
Good. So that's where we're going. Thank you. More of that next week. Thank you very much for that, Anne. Drina, I know you've been cuddling up to something. I would love that to be me, and I know Roger would be loved to be cuddled by you, but that's life.
Oh.
Anything from you, Drina?
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Drina, do you like little cuddly bears?
Sometimes.
Oh, right, because I got a few. All right, then. Thank you, Drina. Right, talking about cuddly bears, Margaret. Oh, it's still Valentine's Day, isn't it, coming up? All right, yeah, fair enough. Right, Margaret. Margaret, if I don't send you a Valentine's present and I send one to Anne or Drina, don't get upset. Right, Margaret, anything you want to say?
Well, do you know, I meet a friend usually on a Thursday or a Friday, and he's always very interested in the archaeology. He was a geologist, so he's very interested in archaeology.
Yeah.
And he always wants to know what we've discussed. And when I saw him last week, I said, we're going to be discussing about Caligula and a possible invasion of Britain. And he poo-pooed it. He said, well, he was a madman and he just got his troops to collect shells on the seashore. And they didn't invade because they didn't trust him because he was mad. So what can I tell him now? Because he does my head in. He always thinks he's right. So what can I tell him?
Right, because we're only halfway through. My God, how dare you? Right, okay. Then let's all come up with an answer. So I think the answer is that he's not a madman.
But how do you know that? How can I persuade him that no, he wasn't? I mean, there's the thing about the gaps in the
record,
the writing. That's interesting. That those, yeah,
right. Caligula was a sociopath. He was concerned about his family. He was concerned about the fact they'd been exiled. He was concerned about the fact that he had been persecuted as a child. His family was still persecuted by Tiberius. His family was exiled. He was a sociopath. He said to himself, I'm going to get my own back on all those people who have done me wrong. And that's what he did, except it was extreme and it was recorded. I make a point. His name was extricated from the records, so condemn Moriarty or whatever it was. But if I asked you, if you went to Rome, would you find any residue columns, anything where there might have been a historical incremental history of the Caesars, and you find that you've got a chunk of a piece that's been armored off because that's when Caligula was actually reigning? And if you could prove that, then you could say, yeah, we know that, in fact, they wanted to get rid of his memory, and Claudius would have been the first to do it because Claudius was, in fact, concerned for his own well-being during the whole life of all of the empires while he lived.
Exactly.
Anyway, also sociopath, there's reasons for it.
Why did they make him emperor?
Because basically, if you look at this chart, he was being poisoned to be emperor, right? So he just become ipso facto emperor because he was the last man on the park. Tiberius just ridiculed Caligula. He just made him small. He ridiculed his family. Tiberius killed Caligula's dad, right? But somehow, somewhere, he was the great nephew of Tiberius and become emperor, right? But he's also
so they had dynasties in Rome.
Yes. This was the Julio Claudian dynasty.
The
thing is, I think to be honest with you, Will was the word sociopath for us today has got more extreme meaning. I feel, but if I want to look practically, right, I'm going to give something away now. Right, let's just give it away. Right. Okay, let's just give it away.
Are you sure?
Here we go. Caligula achieved more in his lifetime. And then, on the domestic front, he had achieved more on the domestic front, buildings and stuff, than Julius Caesar, or if you want to compare him to the achievements of Tiberius and Augustus on the north coast building things, Caligula did more than any of them, right? So is that the work of a madman? Is that the work of a huge idiot? If he was such a madman, why did he have these things built? Why did he take time to have these things constructed, right? And that's the real evidence. He did more than the others did, right? And I think he didn't gather an army like Augustus did. He had an army which was mentioned to ready to go. How much it went, we don't know. Well, when I say we don't know, that's what I'm trying to get to next week.
Why was he assassinated?
Because he maybe you can't really answer that. He was assassinated by one person, right?
Yeah.
Just the same as JF Kennedy was assassinated, right?
Mm.
We don't really know what he could have done, right? But there is one thing that I'll be definitely sure of, right? Britain in that area was going to come under the domination of Rome, where whatever way you want to look at it, it was happening. So if it had already happened, when you look this up, right, and I can't get to grips with this, it's almost as if Claudius was able to conquer Britain in no time at all, right? And another thing that we will be doing next week is the Temple of Claudius next week, right?
Mm.
Which may have already been started before Claudius ever came to Britain.
Mm. I just wonder why Caligula was so hated. Was it just to make way for Claudius? Was it?
Yes, that's basically
Claudius.
That's basically the answer. That's basically the answer. Claudius had no power to get rid of him. It's just that people thought they couldn't control Caligula, right?
Mm.
So if we right, okay, I think I think I'm going to say something now that you're all going to say, "Oh my God, that's crazy." Somebody wrote me earlier on. I said, "Who is the best prime minister that we've had since 1997?" And I actually said Liz Truss, right? And Liz Truss is the only one that was not able to do what she was not able to make the mistakes. She was not able to do what she could have done, right? She was stopped, right? She was stopped from being anybody, right? And she could have been a really good prime minister, and she could have been there today, but she was stopped, right? That's exactly what happened to Caligula. What do we deride? Yeah, we deride Liz Truss. We really do. We deride her, but she didn't have the same baggage as Boris Johnson. She didn't have the same baggage as, for example, Keir Starmer. She didn't have the same baggage as, for example, Sunak. She was not allowed. She was the standout figure in British politics, exactly the same as Caligula. What happens to people who stand out? We get rid of them. JFK, we got rid of him. Fact.
So much infighting that he was outmaneuvered, as Will was saying. If he's not popular, people will be gunning for him because there's a camaraderie going on. And Rome was so full of greed and conquer and the glory and, macho to the full, that any chance to do it, if you were caught out, you were quite strong enough there at the right time, because he had built up a sort of the platform for the main invasion later on in so many ways. But of course, it's faced it fit for all sorts of reasons. We think we know some, and they're just all of them maneuvering one another to gain power, riches, and this is on all the time. So anything could have gone on. You know, they're in power for a short while, bang, killed something else, or killed in wartime. There's so much aggression there and fighting that, you know, however strong you are, look at it going on without Parliament now. They're at each other and doing. But in those days, they didn't like you, kill you, and that's it. As quick as they could. And killing the family, a bit like Stalin's effort. He didn't trust anybody, so kill him. And this power praise, I think, powered a lot there. You said things have been prepared in northern France. Well, he had some sense, but when you say madman, that can mean a lot of things. He's sort of eccentric, or he's clinically deranged, and you can't trust him because he'll collapse or something, or people don't understand what he's doing, and it looks as if he's crazy, but he's got the foresight as long as he's got the backing. And that's
Exactly.
He gets under the current of things, and somebody will catch him out. They're always watching, like Trump now. He's lucky he's still standing. You know what I mean? That controversy, and somebody somewhere, like you say Kennedy, that was a theory. Somebody else might have done it, this, that, and the other. But you know, that could happen. It's such a, I don't know, cauldron of hate and killing.
Exactly.
Just the glory. And for a change, they go see gladiators. You think, oh, you know what I mean?
Actually,
as you said, trying to think of people as they were then in our day is difficult. Just appreciate what was going on there, I think. And it's just not a bit of logic and thinking, oh, well, you could do this, you could do that, that's how people are. But it's a whole different scene, and you think, well, grab what you can. And then, of course, if they get a conquer, they parade to Rome, riches, lovely, until somebody kills them.
Anyway, well done for looking. Well done for looking into it. Looking at the other side of Caligula and what really happened.
Outmaneuvered.
Excellent.
Exactly. So we're going to be doing more of that next week. And what I'm trying to think is that's the season. Those are about to die. Anthony Hopkins plays Vespasian in the series Those Are About to Die. It was out in 2024. It's on Amazon now. Watch it before you've got to watch me in Young Sherlock, which is coming out in March.
Oh, how exciting.
So yes, those who are about to die, watch it. Basically, it's really good because it's about it is about the post Julio-Claudian family where Vespasian takes over, and he plays one of those generals that does come over with Claudius in AD 43, who's also a writer, and it's a really good series. But they show Africa as one of those desolate sand dune drenched landscapes with no trees, no oases, no nothing, and you're thinking, why there's no way this isn't going to work, right? And they made a factual mistake in it, but I don't think it was. It got me looking, and it got me thinking, right? They said, oh, if you're a bad person, you're going to be sent to the tin mines of Crete. And I just thought, there are no tin mines on Crete, so I had to look this up, right? And lo and behold, there aren't much evidence of any tin mines in Crete. However, there is a little bit of tin in Crete, and it got me thinking, right? How do you extract copper? Copper and tin are usually together, right? So how do you work out that you mix copper with tin to make bronze? Because you melt them together because you've got these two ores, but you haven't got much tin. You've got loads of copper. And I just suddenly thought, right, that's how it's done, because there is a little bit of tin in Crete. And then I start me thinking, well, if they're so desperate for tin in Crete, that maybe there were limited amounts of tin mines in Crete, but that's life. Anything else from you, Will, before we crack on to Judith and we finish?
Right, okay. Lugdunum is Lyon in France, attributed.
Lugdunum, coin mints, yes.
Right. Claudius was an administrator. He was educated. He was an administrator. He did have a role in Caligula's government, as he did in Tiberius's. He planned things. He may have already planned the invasion of Britain for the benefit of Caligula. It may not have come to fruition. I think it was said that Licinius, who was a general, who was the tribune who actually supported Caligula when he came to power. I believe he might have been the person who murdered him because he was in fact slighted and his family was slighted along the way. He was the second man in the rankings, but he took a lot of boot kicking and eventually got tired of it and he said, I could be emperor, except the Praetorian Guard said, well, we want the continuation of the reign. We're gonna go with the other chap, Claudius. And that's it. Anyway, that's me. I've enjoyed it so far. Thank you very much.
So far, we're finished for this week in a moment. But anyway, thank you for that, Will. Judith, anything from you quickly, babe? And then we'll call it a night.
Nothing from me, thank you. That was really interesting.
Thank you very much. Well, you should be sent your copies of Illicit Pillar. I don't know where to send Will's, but you send me an address, Will. But what I'm going to say.
Sorry, quick footnote.
Quickly.
I'm coming home into Wales probably in July. Might even get to travel around Britain. Might even want to meet some of you people. Come for a cup of tea. So save anything you got for me. I'll come and visit you on the farm. I'll bring my muddy boots, and we can have a chin wag.
Oh, I will give you a trowel. You could do some excavation at the same time. Brilliant. Okay, then. Well, okay, then. Thank you very much, folks. That's a brilliant night. Starting early is bloody pointless. It's 12 minutes past 10. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been a delight. If nobody else wants to say anything else, I'm going to say good night, Anne, Drina, Margaret, Roger, Will, Judith, and the Pope. And I'll see you all next week.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, folks.
I got your book, by the way.
Thank you, Dirty Rod. Dirty Rod. Not alive. Not Raj. I slap you on the head.
Thanks,
Bang.
There we are. On we go.
I'll go watch the news now. See if Keir Starmer's been sacked.
Well. Cheers, mate.
No, love. Right. Okay then. Yeah. Shouldn't be saying political things on you. Keir Starmer, lovely man. But anyway, right, guys. I don't know what I'm going to say. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you very much. Going to look in the chat box. Nothing in that chat box 1. Nothing in that chat box 2. Nothing in that chat box 3. Nothing there 4. Nothing in that chat box 5. Nothing in that chat box 6. Nothing in that chat box 7. Nothing in that chat box 8. Nothing there 9. Nothing there 10. And nothing there 11. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Ymar o hyd. Nos da. Nos da. Diolch yn fawr i chi.